beer open. It's colossal.
Colossal beer. So, that happened.
Yeah, holy crap! I'm trying not to curse.
I don't think I've gotten into a more yelly debate. Like, not even against like Eric Stryker and Mike Enoch. Like, oof.
Well, when yelling's your only strategy for debate, it tends to get yelly. And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the other gentleman.
Yes. Gentleman being...
I use that term as loosely as possible.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry to have put you through that. For those of you who are watching, and maybe if you haven't caught it, I just finished a debate with Conspiracy Castle / Alex Stein, who...
Oh God, that's his name?
Yeah, that's the name of his channel or something. Who seems to be, to use in my opinion, allegedly, to use a technical term, batshit insane.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be a really good one.
Yeah.
And hi everybody. I'm Mustache Bob from the Mustache Mafia podcast. If you can hear my dulcet tones in my voice.
Yeah, Mustache Bob. So yeah, that was. I don't even think I can actually call that a debate. No. Somebody just came in, jumped, and it was a slugfest. Yeah, I would agree. So Bobby, how did I ruin your day today?
So if you guys have heard Brenton's breakdowns with me before, you've heard a couple of my stories. Today started off as a really nice day. It's like 75, sunny. Went on a nice little date with my special girl today. Went all the way up to Jacksonville and went to this place called the Chamblin Book Mine, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a gigantic bookstore. Watched a movie, had a nice day. Was driving home. Brenton's like, "Hey, would you like to do a debate breakdown?" Oh, sure. I wonder who he's going to debate. Maybe a philosopher, some sort of economist. And no, it's about transport. So pulled off the highway, stopped at a liquor store, bought myself a nice long cigar, bought myself a 40 of a nice double bock that's a 9%. Cracked open another one just now, and I listened to this exchange of ideas between Brent and another gentleman, and I smoked a Churchill the whole time he was doing it because I needed nicotine. Don't smoke, kids; it's bad for you, and it leaves less tobacco in the world for good old Bob. So that's how you ruined my day today, Brenton.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your service, Bobby.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
I felt like, and you can tell me, I felt like this debate was one of like serious extremes, because never before have I triggered an opponent so hard that they literally ran away, and kind of morphed into some kind of red-faced demon.
Yeah, what was with that, man? Like, I could even see that on my cell phone screen. I didn't even have it like maximized.
Honestly, I would say whatever is going on with that guy should probably stay between his psychiatrist and various psychologists. He seems to be, oddly enough, I still kind of like him somehow. I probably shouldn't. I saw him doing some videos like trolling the city council in Texas, and that's cool if you're gonna make things harder for a politician. I'm just
the patience of you have the patience of a saint with these weirdos, brother, because like I listen to these and I'm like, I hate this guy, I do not like him, I want to defeat his political project to the point where he is completely irrelevant, and you're like, yeah, he's not a bad guy.
Buddhist. We're all the great Brahmin. We are the universe eyeing. It's just eyeing for him in a particularly odd way. He was pretty nice before the debate, so I was actually thinking I could have a conversation with him in the way that like I would have a conversation with like Hake, because Hake is out of his mind, but like you can talk to Hake and communicate.
Yeah, like, so first off, before we have this discussion, I just want to clarify one thing. As leftists, we're both leftists. I think we would classify each other as that.
I do not. Well, just really quickly, I don't consider myself a leftist, not because I don't tend to agree with the left on most things. I just am very careful about team mentality. I don't want that creeping into my head and causing me to be, to feel like I have to toe a party line. And that is why I publicly broke with the left in 2014. I almost always agree with the left. if I think they're wrong on something, I will throw them under a bus.
Okay, fair enough. Well, as a leftist myself then, and I think you'll agree with this as I say it, just the first thing is trans rights are human rights. Trans people are marginalized by a system of patriarchy, and their bodies are commodified and exploited by a system of patriarchal capitalism that is harmful to them and to all of us as a society. So I just want to say that right off the bat, like just immediately in any discussion involving trans people.
I would agree 1,000%. And of course, it was very odd that two cis men were yelling at each other over, this. And, I was trying to make it about like rules, and he seemed to be going and losing his shit on like just their basic personhood.
Yeah, well, that's like I think this is the correct term, and somebody in chat can correct me if I'm wrong here. It really is like trans misogyny, because no one really talks about like trans men in sports. I'm a boxer. You're a Kyokushin.
Kyokushinkai, yeah.
Oh well, I almost got it. I almost got it, brother.
No, you got it. By the way, I still suspect that is why Cobra Kai is called Cobra Kai.
That probably is.
Yeah.
But there are trans men who are boxing like professionally right now as we're talking, and no one talks about them. They're specifically talking about trans women because it's about hating or fearing trans women in general. They can't use public bathrooms in some places because of this hatred. They can't compete in sports because of this hatred. They can't like express themselves in public because of this hatred. And if you're siding with the people who are trying to marginalize and exclude them from society, you need to really re-examine where you're coming from on that. And I think that this gentleman who is like, I've never heard of him before because I like to keep my, mind kind of intact and not follow these lunatics. We had like this Gan Mead measuring, genital staring weirdo, obsessed with like what's in somebody's pants and not actually obsessed with like the good of sports.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's absurd.
I'm still wondering if he was lying about doing high school football, because you notice he didn't mention a sport at all in his opening statement. He just was like the sports. I was doing this thing, and then he says he played high school football, and I'm like, that you don't sound like somebody that played high school football.
No, man. Like, well, my background is I'm a boxer and a fencer, because I like combat sports. Apparently, it probably appeals to my personality. They really are. I highly encourage you, if you're listening to this, to find one that's right for you. And that background has kind of given me a little bit of perspective, and I think it's given you the same perspective on this issue, where it's not really about the biology of these people. It's the issue is that they're trans women. If it was about the biology, and I think you did a good job of pointing this out over him like screaming and freaking out constantly like a Fox News host. If it was about biology, they would exclude cis women who produce abnormal amounts of testosterone, who are like they were talking about swimming a lot. So if there's like a cis woman that's like 6'2", they would naturally have to exclude her. In combat sports, we have like weight classes a lot, boxing especially. And there are women in the world, believe it or not, who are about my size. It's a rare thing, of course. But there are women who are about my size who could take me in a fight, and I have no problem admitting that. There are women in the world who are bigger than other cis women who compete in swimming, and they do very well. The one issue that I had kind of with you a little bit in this debate was that, and you did point it out, but I think you could have made the point more forcefully, is when he started talking about the definition of a woman being if they can have a baby. There are many women, cis women, rather, who can't have babies just biologically. There are many cis women who work out to the point where it kind of shuts down their ability to have children at some point. So they're no less women. The term woman is in fact a social construct, and the only argument he had coming back at you on that issue was to ridicule it and to say it was absurd, which is, of course isn't if you actually understand the definition of what womanhood is.
Yeah.
Yep. I see
Well,
his fans are in the chat.
it's so weird. Oh yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, I'm so that thing at the end was like really interesting because we got a freaking troll. Um, claims he has transfers. Yes, Gempt, actually, you were right. That continued. And I'm wondering if he lied to me towards the end, because it seemed like he was like really, really leaning on and using dead names and all that shit. Honestly, I'm pretty sure this guy was lying about like 90% of the things that he said around the debate. And he was even lying at the end when he said he was intersex and stuff, because he's not a serious person.
When you don't have a material response to an argument, which the failed right wing does not have in this whole arena of argumentation, your best bet is to kind of make awful jokes. And the right wing has like 2 jokes, and he was making one of them. And your best bet is to ridicule the actual position that you can't address as being absurd, which like kind of got to you a little bit, because you're like, read a book. And I don't blame you, man. Like, I was thinking the same thing, like when you said it. I'm like, this guy should just read a freaking book.
Yeah. By the way, some guy was asking if I have videos on this channel. Yes, you can actually see one of my fights like on this channel. So just search what did I call it? Search Dageki. I think I have 2 fights there. One I lost because my opponent kept running into my fist. And then the other one I won with a knee to solar plexus. So yeah, you'll find that on this channel. You will also find, like, yes, I am an Appalachian Trail 2,000 miler. There's a picture of me summiting Katahdin. I've lived in the woods for 6 months, carried everything on my back. I'm not going to be making up like my entire swim background because that's ridiculous. You had one guy who really didn't care about sports and was just kind of a vapid media personality that lets the failed right think for him. And then you had me, who actually knows about this shit and cares. So anyway, Bobby, continue, please.
Yeah, so I think your opening statement was very effective. And it showed that you actually kind of have a background on this. You debated another YouTuber who I won't name because I don't like him very much.
Yeah, I'm going to name him Sargon of Akkad, who was freaking, like, that dude was freaking Einstein compared to this weirdo.
He really was. This Karl of Swindon actually did do better in this debate than.
Yeah, well, Karl, and he's notoriously bad in debates, but like, we could have a conversation about the philosophy of gender and language and shit, and he was even somewhat good faith at times. There was just no good faith at all in this debate. And the guy, it was sort of like not even wrong territory.
Yeah, like, it is worth noting kind of like why his strategy is effective with his audience. And you touched on it, is that...
Yeah, they're fucking idiots.
Well, okay, yeah. I'm not going to argue that one. But B, it's kind of effective with these types of people because it allows them to feel that their rage and their misogyny, which is a product of our patriarchal culture, is legitimate. So when he like ridicules, basic like gender theory as absurd, or the basic history of actually having like gender as a social construct, which of course it is, as being absurd, it allows people to kind of terminate their thinking on his side, and
thought terminating cliche.
Exactly correct. And to just like validate their preconceived biases. It disturbs me that it's so effective with his audience, because there are people who are going to come out of this thinking he won.
Oh yeah, you can already see several of them on Twitter at this point.
Sure.
Again, like, I don't care about the opinions of ignorant people because they're fucking idiots. But like, it is a bit frustrating, I think, that we have this many deeply stupid people who are so easily manipulated by the right-wing media machine. And what's just so ridiculous on top of that is, like, these are people that like think they are woke and they understand what's going on. A lot of them are very conspiracy minded and that kind of thing. Yeah. So it is the most ironic thing in the world that these people that supposedly hate the military and supposedly understand clandestine manipulation are being manipulated destinedly Like they're being manipulated right in front of everybody, and they're too stupid to realize it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, well, stupid is probably an accurate descriptor, so I won't argue that. But like at the same time, it's kind of like unsophisticated. Like we've cultivated a culture in this country, especially that produces profoundly unsophisticated, credulous people. And that's a function, as you pointed out, of this culture industry that we have, where we have culture products that are marketed to people that allow them to feel like an emotional release. And in his case, it's disgust, anger, and resentment that he's kind of marketing to people as a culture product.
And then he lies and says that he cares about trans people and shit.
No, I mean, I highly doubt that, as he's basically making a trans misogynist argument. But you have like a multi-million-dollar industry at this point that's dedicated to allowing you to feel these emotional releases. And he actually kind of said this, and it's true. Most of the people that are talking about this now did not care about women's swimming before now, did not care about women's basketball before now. They don't care about like women's boxing or
and they don't care about it now either.
No,
the reason he brought up the WNBA is because right-wingers bring up the WNBA like whenever this particular perennial issue happens.
Exactly. And they'll go back to not caring in about like 2 or 3 months when it's the next culture war issue. But the problem with that is, and why we can't kind of let them just have their little bubble, is that in the meantime, they're going to do like profound harm to trans people who have, basic human rights. And it's really disturbing that like thousands of people, potentially, we don't really know how many trans people probably there are in our society right now, specifically
a lot more than are out of the closet at this point.
Yeah, exactly, because there's such a backlash from the failed right wing, especially against their existence, which as a cis man, kind of one of the values that I was kind of brought up with was to kind of uplift people in our community that are marginalized or who are kind of under threat by people who have more power than they do. And it's disgusting to me as a man to see people kind of bully people because they're weaker than them and use them as a wedge issue to further their own careers or failed ideologies.
And honestly, beyond that, like there's a reason why I get so pissed off on this particular issue. I alluded to it in the beginning, but also like this actually kind of gets at the core of what I think good, healthy masculinity is. And it freaking pisses me off to see people like being bad sports like that, to see some swimmer being like, oh, obviously I can never beat a man. Even if it's true, you should never say that. If you're in a sport, you do your damn best, and you will also find oftentimes that you can do a lot more than you really thought you could. There are some incredible things in sports, and one of the things that they really teach us, and I consider this kind of like the heroic aspect of sports, is you get to a point where someone does something unbelievable, something that should seem to be completely impossible. A 17-year-old girl strikes out Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig in a row. There are so many moments like that in sports, and that's really what people care about. Sports ultimately, it's not about the trophies. It's not about the winning. It is about the competition. It is about those moments. It is entertainment. And it's entertainment because what they're really doing is they're showing you how incredible human beings are and how much we can do and how far we can push the envelope, and which is why there was the, what's it called? The Olympic motto, which, translates into go further, push beyond, go beyond plus ultra.
Well, I was an amateur boxer. I had 82 fights. I won 68, 53 by stoppage, if you're curious. But I would not last.
Hang on for just a second. I'm sorry to jump in on this, but we got a probable fascist here. This is happening. Oh, really, bro? Yeah, we will see about that. Yeah, we'll see. I'll see you in the street, you weirdo. All right.
I'll see you at the next Olympics, bro. But but I would not last 3 minutes against Tyson Fury or Vladimir Klitschko.
Mhm.
Even Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko are, of course, are now fighting against fascism in Ukraine. But I'm 6'1" and change. I'm almost 6'2". The Klitschko brothers are both 6'8". Tyson Fury's like 6'9", and they have like incredible physical advantages over me. They're also much better boxers than I ever was in my entire life.
Yeah,
Uh,
because they care about it and they put in time.
exactly.
Actually, I felt like one of the stronger moments in the debate was actually when like I got him to say that he thought he was smarter and more reality based than the IOC and the NCAA.
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't say like argument from authority, bro. But
Yeah, I don't think he's that smart. The only reason he even knows ad hominem exists because it's like all he does in the stuff, and I hope he can understand what it is going forward. By the way, so there was something I wanted to get into, and I'm very sorry, Bobby, that I keep doing this, but we do have
bro, it's your show.
Here.
Do what you do.
So Brandon Cole. So one, thank you for coming over here. I'm going to assume that this is a good faith question, and me and Bobby are going to answer it for you. Sure. I think some people in the chat have also given you some good answers here, but Bobby, do you want to take this first, or do you want me to say something here?
It's fresher for you, so fire free.
Okay. So Brandon Cole, so guys are born with bigger heart, bigger lungs, faster twitch fibers when they transition. Is that not still an advantage for having that? Yes, it's not still an advantage most of the time. The twitch muscles, yeah, that probably there, depending upon the sport. Powerlifting, for instance. Yeah. The bigger heart, both the issues with the bigger heart and the bigger lungs aren't so much of an issue. And it can actually be bad for you to have a bigger heart. Like you can die if your heart is too big and certain things happen. Same thing with the lungs. When someone is transitioning, they're taking chemicals that change the chemical makeup of their body, which then changes their body's capability to do certain things. And I brought this up in the sense of the VO2 levels. So I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'1". I am 100 I'm trying to get back down to 180 pounds. I'm like around 220 at the moment. I have the bigger heart and bigger lungs than a lot of people. If I took HRT, what would happen to me is that my body would change and my blood's ability to carry the oxygen from my lungs and circulate it throughout the body to get it to my muscles, to get them to function, literally would not, it would work, but because if it didn't, you'd die, but it would not be anywhere near what I can do right now. It doesn't matter how big your lungs are if your blood cannot circulate the oxygen. It just can't. Now, the other issue is that and I mentioned this, there are some advantages that, a trans woman might have over a cis woman, especially in swimming. I mentioned it. One, the larger lungs means your body is a little more buoyant because you've got two big old bags of air inside you, which will make you a little bit lighter in the water. And you could say that oftentimes, having it being larger, having a longer reach can oftentimes, really inform your ability, especially when it comes to sprinting. I was a sprinter. My event, as I said in the thing, was the 50 free and the 50 fly. I also would do 100 free. I do all of the events, but the long distance events, I did not excel at. The 500 free, I never did a 1650 in competition. Because most high school and summer leagues and winter leagues don't go above 500 until you get to the college level. But because one, it's really hard, and two, oh my god, can you imagine how fucking boring that would be for the audience? I used to do that. So when I used to swim, for instance, I literally we would get to the 500s and I would know that my 500 was close to the end. And like everybody else is 500. And so like I'd be like, okay, I'm going to the snack bar, I'm getting myself a freaking hot dog, I've been here for like 8 hours, you know, I'm going to drink a soda, I'll go back and maybe play Magic the Gathering, like 2 or 3 games of Magic the Gathering before it's time for me to swim. That is like, swim meets are long and grueling. And so like, you know, the fact that Leah Thomas is a long distance swimmer really speaks to the fact that she does not have a significant unfair advantage. Her size is not going to play into that as much. And definitely like her, obviously she can't circulate the oxygen that she needs, and she's going to have to breathe more often, which always slows everybody down. Every time you breathe as you swim, you slow down. You know, so like the fact that if this was all about biology, and if like a male swimmer went and like secretly, insidiously went and like took, you know, 2 years of hormones to completely change their body and alter it forever, like got in the water, if they were using like their male advantages, they would be excelling at sprinting. They would be excelling in events like the butterfly, which requires the most strength, and you gain the biggest advantage from having longer arms and a bigger frame. Again, these were the events that I was really good at. Leah Thomas was not, she doesn't do those events and didn't even do them, you know, when she was William. Like, she was really good when it came to swimming 500 and above. So she is she's a distance swimmer. And as a direct result of this, like, I'm really inclined to believe that there is no serious advantage, especially when her time is a full 9 in the 200, I believe, is a full 9 seconds behind the national champion, who is a cis woman. So the idea that like cis women can't compete with trans women is ridiculous. And it's just these men, like insecure men who aren't sure if they're really men, don't feel that they're masculine enough, and want to feel like they are always going to beat a woman, or they are most of the time going to beat a woman, because oftentimes like they don't have much to show for it. You know, they haven't won a lot of competitions. They don't feel that they fit in. And so I really think that's where a lot of this comes from. I think that men who come in and claim that they're wanting to protect women in this, I think really what they want to do is they want to flatter themselves by saying over and over again in public how much better men are than women. And I think a lot of that is probably why Alex is attracted to this. But I actually think more, I gotta say, I think he's just a sheep, and he is repeating the, you know, far right, failed right narrative. It's just become a mouthpiece for this weird, throbbing cultural id. So I hope that answers your question. Bobby, did you have anything you wanted to contribute here?
100% I agree with you on the biology. And if it was about biology, again, if there was a 6'2" woman who was swimming, or if there was like a 6'2" woman who was boxing, if there's a 6'2" woman who was like golfing, you would ban them. If there was a woman who produced an abnormal amount of testosterone biologically, you would ban them from sports. But no one is calling for that. You would segregate sports not by biological sex, but by these biological characteristics that you claim are so important. But in fact, it's really just about excluding trans women. If it was really about just the biology, Vladimir Klitschko would not have been allowed to fight Calvin Brock. I believe that was in like 2005. Brock was like 6'1". Klitschko's like 6'8". Klitschko had an 84-inch reach. And I think Brock had something like a 64-inch reach, and Klitschko blinded him in one eye in a boxing match. But no one was saying like Vladimir Klitschko has an unfair biological advantage over Calvin Brock. No one will ever say that Michael Phelps has an unfair advantage in swimming and should be banned from swimming. This is specifically because right-wingers constantly think about trans women's bodies, constantly get angry about trans women's bodies. Yeah, it's
like,
really
he's like, she's
weird.
a dick. And I'm just like, what does that have to do with her ability to swim? Like it doesn't cause that much drag.
Something that really amused me that he said, and this is purely like my puerile immature humor coming out, was he was like, well, if you made out with a trans woman at a bar, would you be angry? Like, bro, like you were the one making out with the trans woman. Like,
Oh my God.
like if you're really angry about that, oh, I made out with this beautiful woman, oh, I'm so mad. Like,
Did you notice he like, I couldn't see it, like
yeah,
when I said I was bisexual, he like went silent,
he
like
did.
just dead silent. I wish I could have seen his reaction, but I had been looking at it like a paper on the screen, so the video didn't pop up.
I think he thought that was a gotcha because he believes that trans women are in fact men, which they're not, of course. So I think he thought that was a gotcha by saying that you were bisexual, that you
Yeah,
would be okay with making out with a man.
I mean, I would probably be more okay with men. I tend to be more attracted to women than men.
Yeah.
But like, yeah,
I mean,
okay. So he thought that was a gotcha. That's interesting.
that's the impression that I got. He's incorrect, of course, but
Yeah.
like, and I don't think it came across that way. But I think
I should have said pansexual. Shit, I just hate that term.
Well, then he probably would have made a joke about like cooking.
Yeah. No, if you, here's what you do. If the joke about pansexuality is you assume like a frying pan.
Yeah.
Like you're into like kitchen implements. That's the joke that's there. But right wingers only have a couple of these.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to get here really quickly. So Brandon, thank you with the make sense. I assume that you mean that with the eyes going there. I'm a little weirded off on that. If indeed you are acknowledging and understanding the point that's being made, I can, congratulate you on, because it's hard. It's very hard to break out of our biases and our little bubbles and try to see like actual reality. And I thought that was really interesting, like where the guy was saying that like I wasn't based in reality. And again, I think this is because he's projecting and he knows a lot of his ideas about reality aren't real. Like that's just a big thing on the far right.
Well, they also assume that their failed right wing ideology is based on reason and logic and tradition, and these things are all reality. And in fact, all of their failed ideology is based on social constructs, and their constructs don't actually stand up to reason.
And the fairly recent constructs too. Like, they
don't know that, man.
The American far right is not traditional, like at all. They are not traditionally masculine. They are like, especially when you get into kind of like when Trump came in and infected the GOP, this super far right quasi-fascist, kind of QAnon movement. These are not like effective men. These are not alphas. And you've even seen this like in the history of fascism. Go look at like freaking pictures of Hitler. Look at like, Franco. These guys were like teeny tiny guys. They were somewhat effete in the way that they moved and spoke. Franco looks like a douchebag school teacher.
He kind of does.
Yeah. And like the most masculine of like all the major fascists was fucking Mussolini, and he looked like freaking Marlon Brando after the poor guy let himself go. So these failed right people are also failed men, and they don't realize it because they have gotten it into their heads that like they are the ones who know about combat. That's why they freaked out about General Milley. They are the ones that know about sex, when really like these are just inferior examples of our species and our country. And unfortunately, they have been conditioned and taken advantage of by people in the government to turn their kind of aggrieved sense of entitlement and rage at a world that doesn't give to them what they think they're owed. And they've been able to turn that into money for clicks and advertising and all that other shit. So, yeah.
I actually have a funny story kind of about that from my boxing days, is that I used to fight with this guy named Timothy, and Timothy actually went by the ring name Princess, specifically so people would take him lightly when they would see that they're fighting somebody named Princess. But Timothy looked like he ate two of Brock Lesnar. Like this Timothy was like built like a Panzer tank. This guy was terrifying.
So he's Little John, basically. It's that.
Exactly. And like I was scared to fight Timothy because Timothy would get so into it that when you put his mouth guard in, you had to kind of throw it because he would bite. Like he was a lunatic. But We were out one night with another friend of ours called JP, we'll call him in this scenario. And JP says, you can, Timothy was a gay man. And JP goes, you can always tell a gay man by his hands. And Timothy just takes his two giant man mitts and slams them on this table and goes like, what the fuck do you mean by his hands? And I think people like the guy you debated could use kind of like a wake-up call like that. For just in general, just life in general, because you're right, they are kind of trying to live up to this toxic idea of masculinity, which harms them because it gives them these weird ghoulish outlooks on the world that don't stand up to a reasoned argument, that harm them because they try to live up to these ideas. Jordan Peterson's a great example of that, like where he's trying to live up to this idea of toxic masculinity, and he like, destroyed himself as a human.
Did you see that recent thing that happened with him where he was talking to that other effete weirdo? Like, and he said, like, the headline looked like a parody. It looked like something that someone would take like really bad faith, but it's like he said that like Antifa was like the mark of Cain, and then cried.
Yeah, Jesus, like there's nothing wrong with crying, but like that like headspace that he's in is not good.
There's nothing wrong with crying. Crying at that
is a bad thing.
There's a lot that is not working up here, and he's been really like he's been a shadow of himself ever since the benzos and the induced coma forced himself into, because again of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, and having toxic masculinity have you lash out at women's sports, it's weird. These sports that people don't really watch, don't really care about, but they have to lash out at it so they can otherize and diminish female athletes, essentially. It's weird, man. Like, I don't know any other way to put it without using like really derogatory language. It's a profoundly weird thing. And again, we've touched on this, but they will go back to not caring about women's sports in about 6 to 8 months. But the danger is that in those 6 to 8 months, they're going to do profound damage to a bunch of women athletes. If we know anything about the failed right wing, it's that they have a tendency towards violence. So I do worry about like trans panic or retaliation against like trans female athletes who are competing in sports.
One of the things like when a woman like there's a great podcast called The Dollop. If you guys are listening to it, check it out like as soon as you can. But there is they do like a deep dive of American history, and it's not dry. It's like two comedians going over it. So, the pill is a bit sugared and it's entertaining. But they talk about like the first woman to run a marathon. This freaking weirdo like tried to tackle her and pull her like out of like the marathon. He was that triggered by just her presence in the marathon. So it's like I said in the debate, like people believe that certain things are set and real and solid, and they hold on to them. And one of those things is like that men are men and women are women, and neither the twain shall meet. And it doesn't. And when they find out that reality doesn't follow that, I honestly think it taps a little bit into their fear of death and impermanence and irrelevance. And I think that's again part of the reason why the dude like his face turned red and he ran away for 5 minutes.
I will give him credit that at least he did have the presence of mind to step away when he got that angry.
That was, oh my God. So I will say now there were a couple of things here that I was weaker on, and I'm sure that, the fucking idiots are going to clip all to hell the fact that I had confused like the event with the NCAA, because I remembered I was reading the stories about it, and that there's another bigger meet coming up that she's going to be swimming at. And for some reason, because they talked about the college and they talked about the fact that she'd set a record in that pool and that it was the Ivy League, I was just like, oh, so the NCAAs are coming up. And, my head's been buried in a screenplay and 2 other comics, a Kickstarter campaign, and, being the father of a 3-year-old boy. Yeah. So like this debate, I can admit I did not do the kind of research I normally do. And it was simply because I did not have time. Like do I take care of my son, or do I prepare to do my best to own some weirdo that's going to tell me that I took the L anyway? Like, no, I'm going to be there for my family, as opposed to, being so incredibly attached to the mainstream news that, I haven't. That said, it was a basic thing. And, that was a definite failure on my part.
Yeah.
I don't think it had anything to do with my arguments overall, but people oftentimes have this, I think it's a genetic fallacy. They think that the presence of one moment of ignorance or not knowing something, or getting something wrong, or doubling down on something, will then invalidate everything else that they're talking about because of the halo effect. This is a psychological condition where people naturally, especially the dumber ones, attribute one characteristic of a person to all characteristics of the person. So if a person is smart in one way, they are smart in all ways in these people's minds. And, that's simply not true.
Yeah, exactly correct. And that's the one thing I would have suggested to you, is that next time you debate one of these ghouls, think of it like kind of a fight, where you would watch tape of the other fighter and find out what their typical gotchas are, so you don't fall into them. One he got you on, and you're right, he did get you on it. And then he just used it for the rest of the debate to try to diminish your credibility.
It was that, and the men can have babies, because what he was trying to say was that the only reason scientists are now saying this is that they've decided that trans women are women, but then they're saying that men can have babies. No, guys, seriously, and I kept bringing it up. There's a great article in Scientific American, Sex Redefined, and there's several others. And one of the things that's always stuck out to me, and I brought this up, but had trouble getting it out because, crazy screaming match with a weirdo. There was a guy, assigned male at birth, lived as a male his entire life, and wound up having to go to the doctor because it turned out, he had a functional womb and was entering menopause at 45 years of age. Now, could that man have had a baby? Yeah, probably. But, I don't know exactly in his case. But the idea that, if you are assigned a certain social role based upon what people think about your external and internal bodily characteristics, it's, as I said in the debate, nature is a mad scientist, and she doesn't give a shit about what humans think about gender or anything. I mean, freaking frogs and clownfish literally change their gender, or change their sex, just in relation to their environment. These things seem really solid because our society currently is based on a lot of hierarchy that is related to gender, but they're just not. And you can't cling to them. And unfortunately, some people just haven't done the spiritual and intellectual work to reckon with this and find a way to move forward. So they prefer to live in a fantasy world where, everything is this sort of 1950s nostalgic idea of society, when it's just not true. It wasn't even true in the 1950s.
And I thought it was good that you brought up Diogenes, because it is a really apt analogy for what they're talking about as women. Like, a woman can have a baby, a horse can have a baby. Is a horse a human woman?
Oh shit, I should have said that. That would be great.
I was thinking it the whole time. Sartre even talked about it, in the 20th century, where he was saying come up with a description of a chair that includes nothing else that's not considered a chair.
And you will fail.
You will fail every time, because these are social constructions, and they're also imperfect methodologies for us to exchange symbols to represent phenomena that exist in the world, regardless of the existence of the symbol. Like my desk, right? It exists whether or not we call it a desk. A woman is a social construct that represents a being in the universe, whether or not we call that being a woman or not. And all we're trying to do now is to kind of expand the meaning of that symbol to encapsulate everything that actually we consider a woman.
Yeah. Well, because again, and I said this in the debate with Hake, and I love it that I could have a reasonable conversation with Hake about this. Like, but not this. I have had more reasonable conversations with actual Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah, that was he wasn't after a reasonable conversation. He was after the dunk and the soundbite.
Yeah. Ugh. And I'm glad that, I pointed out at the end, he was completely vapid. Like,
Yeah.
There was such a level of superficiality to his values and beliefs. Like, that is a person who has like no inner life. Like, I mean, I almost think the NPC meme almost applies here, but
Well,
not in the
shrimp.
sense that, because clearly he's a weird individual, but like, no, like the absolutely like lights are on but no one's home kind of thing there. At least that was my feed on it by the end of it. Like, when, oh, and Bobby, did you see me get him on populism?
Yeah, like I the failed right's attempt to be like quote unquote populist is absurd because their entire movement is predicated on holding up the people who are already at the top of social hierarchies and
Yeah.
not actually about lifting up the population or
Mm-hmm.
even doing what's popular with the population. Like failed right-wing policies are not actually popular with the mass of people, which is why they constantly talk about like mob rule, mob rule. Oh my God, we can't let the people actually decide what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Now,
did see that.
yeah. Now it's interesting. Like, we actually got into it about the chat at MTT.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and I've said that stuff before, like in practice, but again, he had no actual points and
Yeah.
no research, and he knew it from the beginning, which I think is why like he immediately just lost his shit. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen him. I saw him like debate Vadim, and it was just basically constant gish galop. That was what I was expecting
Right.
actually going into this. And it wasn't so much gish galop. It was just making the same points that had been, already debunked or dealt with over and over and over again.
Yeah, and insisting that you took the L, like,
Yeah.
you lost. I win. I declare victory. I win.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Dude, if you're sitting there in a debate and telling the other person that you lost, I won, you lost. You definitely did.
It reminded me of this parliamentary debate I had when I was in National Forensics Association, which is a speech and debate organization at the college level, where I destroyed this kid in a parliamentary debate. And he comes after me after the debate, and he walks up to me. He's like, "If you have a problem with me, man, you say it to my face."
Wait, what?
Yeah, this dude tried to fight me over a debate. He was like 5'4" and not in good shape, and I'm like, brother, you don't want to do it. Like,
You do not want to do this.
you don't know. Well, he was from Ave Maria Catholic College here in Florida, and
Oh, you poor bastard.
all of those guys are, I don't know now. Maybe it's very good now, but at the time they were all mutants. So
so my wife, she lived in Northern Kentucky, and I remember when that thing happened with that with a Covcath kid.
oh yeah.
Yeah. And like it kind of broke and it became sort of big news for a number of reasons. But like when I was like, honey, there's some school from Northern Kentucky, and the students were doing like all this bad stuff, and like my wife was like, was it Covcath? And I'm like, yes, they have a terrible reputation. Like across the board.
If that had happened about 4 hours later, I would have been trying to get my Uber there because I lived in DC at that time. And I would have been loaded walking by that.
Yeah. So, like, as this whole thing like kind of has continued, I feel like I really got him on, and I also felt like at the beginning I had a good subtle thing where I asked him what sports he did, and they said football, and I was so not swimming.
Yeah, so he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah. I also feel like here's the thing though. So I got him there. I definitely, in the sense that usually the more emotional person is ruled to have lost the debate in most people's minds. And, again, like, I don't know what the hell happened to his face. like throughout it. That was
he
some
got
weird
red, bro.
fucking shit.
He was redder than my local DSA chapter down here.
Oh, like I said at the beginning, he was triggered. Like that was, and like how far somebody has to go for me to call them triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a term used lightly.
Yeah. No, I definitely don't, because like, one, it's stupid and it's overused and it's a cliche. And usually when people say triggered, they just mean, you're mad. Right. But, that seemed to have gone beyond anger and like just into the realm of like your core beliefs are being twisted inside your, and you like you're getting punched in the soul.
And I know we've made this point a lot, but it goes back to the fact that this is based on like rage at trans women for existing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because he never brought up trans men in the whole debate, I don't believe.
No, not once. I brought up trans men. Mac, whatever his last name is. When he was forced to compete against girls after HRT and just obliterated them. He didn't want to do that, but the freaking people like who think that men are men and women are women and marry the train shall meet forced them in, and ironically forced an unfair situation on the women that they claim they want to protect from an unfair situation.
Right. And he wanted to make broad rules based on, like, let's say for the sake of argument, right, mm-hmm. that he's correct about the swimmer whose name I can't remember. Because unlike you, I don't actually know anything about swimming. And I admit it freely. But like, let's say for the sake of argument, he's broadly correct about that one swimmer. He wants to exclude hundreds or thousands of people based on an outlier.
Yeah.
But not cis people at all based on that outlier. It's mm-hmm. specifically about excluding trans people in that regard. And they want what they perceive as outliers to justify a mass, I don't want to use the term oppression because it's kind of overused too, but a mass oppression of trans people at this point. And it's absurd. And it's not to benefit sports. It's to specifically assuage what you were talking about. There's their insecurity about their own masculinity, their own relevance, and their kind of, it's almost like
mm-hmm.
Beneficial misogyny in a way, where they think that they're protecting women, but in fact are just excluding a group of women.
Yeah. Well, the whole TERF, for those of you who are not familiar with trans exclusionary radical feminists, some of them say it's a slur. No, it's not a fucking slur. It's exactly what they are. It's just describing them.
Yeah.
They just don't like reality. Like a lot of these people are like, they are basically like the straw man version of feminists that the far right has been saying all feminists were. Like, and again, like the guy said he was a feminist in the debate, which is just obviously a lie.
Yeah, I mean, I think he even said it kind of sarcastically.
Yeah. Well, again, he was lying at the end saying he was gender. Though, maybe it's usually if someone gets really hung up on this, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some gender issues in there. Again, not relevant, not a problem, but it's something that I have really realized over and over again. The far right love to project, like, holy shit. Like you were talking about that with like Adorno and like his Fash test or whatever. But like this morning, for instance, like, I was, a lot of people were freaking out about the Supreme Court justice. And I didn't get to say this because he was like, oh, you're probably happy about the Supreme Court justice. And I was like, okay, guys, this is my opinion on the Supreme Court. There are far too many people on the Supreme Court, and both they and the Supreme, well, not they, in Minecraft, right. The biggest problem is that the Supreme Court has not been set on fire by now. So
see, my sockdem self is going to push back on that a little bit. I think there aren't enough people on the Supreme Court.
Oh, that's the other way.
I think you should put so many people on the Supreme Court that they can fill up Yankee Stadium, so as to make it irrelevant and non-functional.
I have argued for that as well, and that's probably something one wouldn't have to preface with in Minecraft.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, but it's like the very idea that a fucking anarchist is going to be excited about a Supreme Court nomination.
Yeah.
Oh, just holy shit. I'm wondering actually if some of the rage that we saw had something to do with the fact that these like talking points that the far right media gave him just weren't working. And
I think so too. Yeah.
Like he was like, you won't say that men are stronger than women. I'm like, yeah, at times they are.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I run into like Ben Shapiro fans, they, and I'm not saying this guy's a Ben Shapiro fan. I would not be surprised, but I'm not saying he is. But like when I run into those guys and they present to me his bad arguments and they don't stand up if I'm having a conversation with them, they do tend to get angry because it's like they got like the cheat codes to win an argument because they kind of view it, because they kind of view it as like a product, like argument A, counter argument B equals like good outcome C, and when that doesn't work out, they get really angry because they've devoted so much time to this. That
by the way, I want to bring something up here because it looks like, oh, and do you remember when somebody did the "Let's Go Brandon" joke?
I did, yeah.
That was funny.
There's a liberal guy here, and I won't say who he is, but he lives near me. He's a very liberal guy, if not like a sock dem, who owns like a t-shirt store here, and he makes like half of his income selling "Let's Go Brandon" t-shirts to Republicans.
So fucking dumb. So okay, I want to pull something out here because there seems to be like some sort of I haven't been following it as much because there's a lot in the chat, but we got this here. Biology exists. I'm sorry.
Sure. Of course, biology exists,
but that's not actually what you mean. What you're saying when you say biology exists, I'm sorry, is you are saying objective reality agrees with my idea of what objective reality is, and I am afraid to confront that fact. Right. Like I'm afraid to think of anything else other than that. I'm afraid that I might be wrong. So I'm going to fall back on this, which is, to tell you the truth, a thought terminating cliche. Thought terminating cliches are cliches that people tell to themselves when they start to feel cognitive dissonance. When you have a certain idea about the world in your head and that idea gets challenged, it hurts. It physically hurts. And what winds up happening is that people develop coping mechanisms. And one of their coping mechanisms to deal with this is to say something like, biology exists, I'm sorry. Or to say something like, what is it? If I'm sitting there doing a critique on capitalism, I start talking about the issues with wage labor. Somebody might say, in reaction to that, because I rattle them and because it hurts and they don't like it, they might say something like, life isn't fair.
Right.
It's just these little phrases that we use to fool ourselves. Now, I don't want to pull you out too much here, because like I said, this is something that most people do. And most people don't know that they do it because most people do not live consciously. They're not here in the moment. They don't specifically take the steps that I have taken, that Bobby has taken, to try to come to a more accurate position on reality. They sort of accept the world that they're given, the ideology that's handed down to them, and the view that they seem to have at this particular point in history. It's another reason why I called that guy a sheep. Because, I mean, really, he didn't think of those ideas on his own. He's literally just copying what he's heard from conservative media. So it's you are not bad for having made this mistake. And you are not necessarily even wrong for having made this mistake, because as we said at the beginning of this whole thing, it is an ad hominem fallacy to believe that if a person makes a mistake or drops down something, or that they are then wrong about everything else. One characteristic of something cannot be prescribed to the whole. So that's what I had there. Thank you for commenting, and looks like being a reply guy here in the comments.
Well, biologically, from my sports background, right? Muhammad Ali had every conceivable biological advantage over Joe Frazier. when they fought in the fight of the century. Joe Frazier knocked Muhammad Ali down and handed him his first loss.
Yep.
Corey Sanders, I believe this was in like 2003, I could be wrong about the specific year, was a South African golf pro who took up boxing, and he had every possible biological disadvantage against Vladimir Klitschko, and he knocked Vladimir Klitschko out in like 5. Like, to say that like biology is determinative of outcome in sports is kind of almost absurd. And you're not banning people with these quote unquote advantages.
Yeah. So, by the way, here, thank you, by the way, Andrew, for coming around. I know how many. I actually didn't. I insulted him several times. I did not make a ad hominem argument. As I explained in what an ad hominem is, it is not an insult or a personal attack on someone in that way. It is a fallacy of relevance. So, for instance, a good example of this might be perceived hypocrisy, even if it's real. So let's say I go to a doctor and I'm a smoker, and the doctor says to me, listen, you've got to stop smoking. It causes cancer. And I'm like, okay. The doctor told me to stop smoking. It causes cancer. And then about 30 minutes, I leave and I walk and I see that doctor taking a smoke break. Now, does it mean that he is wrong when he told me that smoking causes cancer? No, he's right. And if I were to use the fact that he is a hypocrite to try and disprove his actual statement, I would be fooling myself with a logical fallacy. You are an idiot is not a ad hominem argument. It is just an insult. Now, if you say you are an idiot, therefore you are wrong, that is an ad hominem in much the same way as if somebody says like, oh, you have brown hair, therefore you're wrong. It is a fallacy of relevance. It seems to most people's brains like it should be true, but it's not, because we've got these monkey brains that just don't work that well. In a lot of ways. And unfortunately, again, politicians and culture warriors and, assorted weirdos, take advantage of that for fun and profit, both literal profit and also profit in the form of political power. Because if you get enough fucking idiots convinced that you're right, they will do horrible things for you. They will, for instance, try to overthrow the entire U.S. government on January 26th.
January 6th.
Yeah. What'd you say?
You said the 26th. It was the 6th.
Oh, 26th. Yeah, January 6th. Yeah. Well, they might try it on the 26th, too.
I mean, hey, whatever date works for them.
Yeah. There's also also, let's say someone just took that clip where I said January 26th instead of January 6th. And then they put that out and they said, you lost the argument. Here's why.
Right.
Yeah, it's meaningless. And so, like, one of the things that I really want to do with this channel for everybody here, regardless of like where you fall, ideologically, if you feel like you're more on the right, if you're, I want everyone to be a little more conscious of the world around them. And I want everyone to think critically, because I should not be doing your thinking for you. If somebody comes to me who loves my channel and says to me, Brent, oh my God, you're so smart, you're always right, I'm going to tell them no. I mean, like, I am by no means an unintelligent individual, but I will also, some days I wake up and I forget to put pants on. Like, and even that is really weird. Like, he seemed like he knew I was super smart and then like was trying to turn that against me at one point, but it just seemed like it felt like what's the term when somebody is like really insecure and aggrieved about something?
Overcompensation.
Overcompensation. Yeah, that's perfectly it. Because, it's just jumping on that shit and keep saying it. And it's like, really?
He was doing the overcompensation tango at the end there.
Oh, yeah. Well, and again, I think he was scared. I think the opening points really scared him. And, It's a shame too, because like if he had approached the thing in good faith, I was perfectly reasonable. Like I was willing to go in there and talk with him and be compassionate and listen and try to get at what he was really talking about, but he didn't, because, I don't know, maybe he was scared. Maybe he didn't realize what was going on. Or maybe he was just looking to mine it for gotcha clips for his next cringe compilation.
That was probably it. I do want to say one positive thing about him, because I'm a nice guy. I will give him one positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
His suit fit, and he used a real pocket square.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's it.
No one should ever wear a suit under any.
I wear suits all the time, bro. I just got out of a suit.
It's interesting, actually. So for years, I've always kind of had this issue with like suits, particularly neckties. And I
don't wear ties, so I'm agreeing with you on that one.
Because they're awful and no one should ever wear them for any reason. Not only are they just uncomfortable and restraining, but like this goes back to like when I was in like all boys boarding school and they forced us to wear button-ups and ties every single day. And I thought it was just the lamest thing in the world. And like ever since then, like no matter what situation it is, like I will bristle at the idea of putting on a suit, unless it's a badass kicking Italian suit and I'm like going to a wedding or something.
Yep.
And if I can get like a purple tie and like a really cool pocket square, I can do that. But like the idea of wearing a suit regularly, it sound like that is ulcer inducing to me.
Some dude in DC told me I dressed like a Yakuza one time. I got a good laugh.
That's freaking cool. So Bobby, now I actually have to go to the bathroom. I am not getting mad and running off, because you'll see my face has not become a twisted mass of rictus horror.
Yeah.
I'm going to go use the bathroom. While I do, can you talk to the audience
sure.
until I get back? Yeah. Okay, cool. Don't use any racial slurs, and don't sing. You are not allowed to. No, please sing to them. In fact, sing to them the entire time. All right. I will be right back.
What do I got? I got a Volare. No, I'm not actually going to do that, guys. I'll look at the chat though. Let's see. Oh wow, there's a good argument going on in the chat. Well, I'll tell you guys a funny story while Brenton's away. Hopefully this is pretty quick, not a really long one. Back on the suit subject is that I was outside of oh yeah, man. I don't. Hey BZ, I saw that. I don't have the authority to actually put you in, and Brenton's gone. So that would be great if Brenton was still here, but he has abandoned ship to use the bathroom and not actually be angry and run away, which is kind of unfortunate. So I will tell a funny story. So I was outside of a place called Employees Only in New York with a friend, and I dressed like kind of I'm in the Gambino family sometimes when I'm in a suit. And I was trying to get a taxi cab while my friend was trying to break up a fight. And I was far enough away so I couldn't hear what he was saying, but he walked up to these two guys and he was like, "Yo, do you know who that guy works for?" Pointing at me. "Do you know whose place this is? Do you know who he works for?" And these guys thought I was connected. So they stopped fighting. And Rocco walks up to me and tells me that story. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, what if there was actually somebody who was connected? So he almost kind of got me in a fight. So that was kind of funny. Is there anything cool in the chat? Let's see. A full bladder is a sign of weakness. That is absolutely true. And I can tell you, as somebody who's had way too much beer during this stream, that Brenton's full bladder is in fact a sign of weakness. And I hope he doesn't listen back to this. Clutch bluff. Yeah, that was a clutch bluff. That was a really good one. Let's see what else. I guess my nuance is different to yours. Fair enough. We are extreme to each other. I have no idea what the context of that conversation is. But yeah, in this debate, I think Brenton did very well. In the future, and I've told this to him already, if you guys have been listening, you never even been close to a fight. Bro, I've got 82 amateur boxing fights, so yeah, I've been close to a few fights. But in this debate, I think he did very well. He presented a lot of facts that are correct, and he's back. That was fast.
Yep.
The chat says a full bladder is a sign of weakness, by the way.
Yeah, I would agree. I should die like Tycho Brahe.
I'm just saying I had a 40, and now I've had like 2 beers as I'm talking to you, and I haven't gotten up. So Chad Bob confirmed.
Yeah. So by the way, is BZ still back here? I heard through my I'm psychic
Yeah,
that he wanted to come on. I'd be very happy to bring you on here, BZ, if you're still here.
yeah, I think he is.
We'll wait to hear if he is. If he ran away, I'm just going to make fun of him.
Oh God. You both would actually like this topic of a video I kind of want to do. Is I want to make fun of this Barry Weiss poem.
Okay, BZ, I'm going to send you, Bobby, make fun of that while I send. Oh yeah, we need to talk about that crazy fucking poem.
Yeah, like that's like a whole stream, but yeah, we got to do it. Like I'll send it to you, BZ, when you get in here.
Yeah, let me get him in here. So chat, this is deep lore. This is Brenton Lengel deep lore. BZ Douglas was one of my first friends in New York City. Brilliant musician. I said magician. Brilliant musician. Really thoughtful guy and an investigative reporter. He's been working with like BLM in Cleveland and like doing some really, really good activism. He's one of the people that if I hadn't met him, I might not be an anarchist today. And also like I probably, without him, I may not have ever gone down to Occupy Wall Street. So actually I blame everything on you, BZ. I could have been happy. No, I couldn't. But so let's just get this thing sent off to him. Sorry, Bobby, you go.
Oh no, I was listening to your deep lore.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have to make fun of that poem at some point.
Easy. Do you want to save it or do you want to like read it on stream right now and then we'll do a video on it later? Because
we've been going for now. We can do it now too. Yeah, we can do it twice. I don't mind doing it twice.
Yeah, you need to mention things more than once. By the way, okay, so this was another weird thing that people. This is some more deep Brenton Lengel lore. People think, because I bring up the Ringo Award nomination all the time, that like I am secretly stewing over not having won a Ringo Award. I have nothing but disdain for all awards. The fact is that the only time anyone ever wins an award is when the award committee stands to gain more by giving them the award than that person stands to gain by receiving it. So again, it's just bullshit. The only reason I even talk about it a lot is it just makes the comic stand out a little bit more in people's minds. And also because like, you need to repeat things over and over again before they sink in. So like, if you're like a fucking weirdo out there trying to go after me about that, and I just mentioned this because somebody was trying it like earlier today, like I have some weak spots. That ain't one of them.
Did you slap anybody at the ceremony?
Oh, okay. So the slapping at the ceremony, I've said this before. Violence is great and never causes any, it's good and cool and never causes any bad consequences for anyone ever. What did you think about the slap at the ceremony?
Oh, I don't give a rat's ass. I haven't watched the Oscars in like 15 years and I'm not about to start. Like, obviously it was wrong to slap Chris Rock over a joke at his wife's expense.
Yeah.
I think people are reading way too much into it. Like, so I heard actually at a function that I was at the other day, I heard somebody say that, well, who sponsors the Oscars? It was Pfizer, and they're coming out with an alopecia drug.
Hey, BZ, check your, I think your Instagram or your Facebook. I sent it to you on Facebook, but it's telling me that I sent it to you on Instagram for some reason. So check that. The invite is in there, and I'll get you right on in. So I'm sorry. Continue, Bobby.
Oh, the somebody that I know was telling me that it was all Pfizer plot. Because they're coming out with an alopecia drug, so they were trying to bring attention to alopecia by having Will Smith slap Chris Rock.
By the way, somebody that's, where can I find your fighting videos? They're on this channel.
Yeah.
They're like several years older. Look for search Dageki. I have like first fight and second fight. The first fight I win. I lose because my opponent kept running into my fist. You're not allowed to punch in the face in Kyokushin. And this particular tournament was one of the first ones that I did while doing this style and having a big martial arts background otherwise. And then the second one is like, This is the one where I score a knockout in 45, like 45 seconds, which was pretty fun. Actually, it was awful. It was the longest 45 seconds of my life, and I'm very glad that I knocked the guy out that quickly because I did not want to keep doing it.
There's a video of me floating around. I gotta find it. I gotta send it to you. Where I was in a fight with this guy in a boxing match, and I pointed over his shoulder and I said, "What's that?" with the mouthpiece in, of course. But he turned around. So I just hit him as hard as I could when he turned around.
Nice.
He fell down, and the entire crowd, including people who like loved me and were related to me, were booing.
Yeah. I don't know. I would have cheered for that, and I'll tell you why I would have cheered for that.
Protect yourself at all times.
Yeah. Well, I think you were clever there.
Yeah.
You know, was it kind of underhand? Good, BZ.
Yeah.
Welcome to
BZ.
the stream.
Hey. Yo, I've got
doing?
all like my Daruti swag up.
Sweet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's the handmade anarchist bandana that I and my wife created for you.
Yeah, I got a little scene. I got this little robot here holding this pin. I've been getting my whole like backdrop set up.
Oh, nice.
Freedom should be free.
I have a Mad Men poster and an army duffel bag behind me, so I wouldn't look as good.
Oh, and I've got a little
you
Nazi.
You could have this as well if, like, you'd ever give to my campaigns, you bastard.
I'm sorry, Brett. I'm a little.
That's all right. It's perfectly all right. I should honestly give you the book for free at some point. But yeah, BZ, welcome. Did you watch the crazy screaming match?
Well, no,
I will not call a debate.
I came in here to be like, well, who are you reaching now? And I do appreciate what you do in terms of like, you're the opposite of like, you're not platforming. These seem like they're people with platforms. Mm-hmm. And I hope folks are coming around here for the nuanced discussion you have, and that you're reaching them. It's sort of the opposite thing of like, well, you know, that's the criticism people have when you're like on with like a Molyneux or something like that. But I think where you're reaching people is a good thing. And I appreciate the arguments that you have. And I certainly appreciate having met Bob. I've got his, I'll get my plug out of the way at the top. I've got a new podcast coming out, Walking the Wire, which is just going over the wire episode by episode. And Bobby is our episode 1.
It was a great episode, brother.
Yeah. So thank you, by the way, for coming on, BZ. So the guy that I argued with, he was actually on Tucker Carlson recently.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, he did some weird thing where he started rapping to like the city council in Texas. Which I'm broadly for, just anything you can do to fuck with a politician. But
that was that guy. I've seen that. That was that weirdo.
Yeah, that was that weirdo. It's got like, it was really weird too, because he's like, I'm mainstream, and I'm like, you have like 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. You are not mainstream, my friend. Oh, but like, yeah. So that's him. He was on Tucker Carlson recently, and clearly kind of was like high on his own supply a little bit by the end of that.
Hey, good for him, man.
Yeah. Well, again, I genuinely think it's cool to make a politician's day worse all the time. Like, just do that.
Wait, so I'm sorry, not to just like jump in. Like, what are we talking about? So what is like the bullet points of like who he is and his like core like ethos that you're pushing back against?
Bobby, why don't you explain this, since I've been talking about it.
He hates trans people, and he's insecure about his masculinity, and it's everybody's problem.
Fuck me. You know what's crazy? I think, was I talking with you, Bobby, or someone? Because recently I've been bringing up the topic of conspiracy theory a lot. With working with Philip, my co-host on the show, dives into. He wrote a book called The Pedogate Primer. And so we're, in all these things. And I recently came across some of the trans conspiracy theories that are like out there from like libertarian or anarchist, like Jeremy Corbett, advancing that like this is the agenda of the transhumanists.
Oh God.
So like melt away gender. And it disturbed the hell out of me, because here's the thing. My sister is trans, and my cousin came out as trans shortly after living with me, possibly because, while she was living with me, we had like, good frank conversations like family do. And she came from a very like conservative Catholic family and always felt like an outsider. And there was something about her. I was always like, she's just not fitting in. And watching these people fully flourish now. And here's the thing with my sister, her wife does not give a shit. If anything, the worst thing that's come out of this transition is she's like, well, now my spouse is hotter than me.
That's brutal.
And with Rose, she's really coming out of her shell. My cousin, like I said, was a gamer, very introverted, tried on a lot of hats, was in the army for a brief stint, or I think just like all the way in on the reserves, or tried to get into the army. And so has really starting to find their place. So that's the thing. When I just hear this hostility towards trans with the right, it seems like it's uncomfortable, and on the left, but both sides, it sort of does seem like it comes out of like, I always sense this confusion, like they just don't get it. I'm like, do you know anyone who's trans? And these two relatives of mine were not the first, because I lived in New York for 10 years where I met you. And our close friend, who we both talk about a lot, now he's mythical in the Brenton Lengel lore, is John Murdoch, who worked at the basement of the Lucky Cheng's drag restaurant, which is not the same thing as transgender, but at the same time, it's people playing in all the fluidity of it, and they're fine people. There's nothing wrong with it. And I grew comfortable with it even before that, knowing my girlfriend at the time had coworkers who were transgender, and that was actually my first experience meeting a couple, and my brain did need some time to come to terms with, okay, so she was a he, but they're still together. And when they got together, she was a he, and it's okay. And I remember having bar thoughts where I would sit in this bar I loved a lot, and like I'd write in a notebook about philosophical things, and then I'd go dance and just chill. But one of the things I remember writing about once was like, how is a transgender person like ever not living a life of deception? Because at that age, as like a 20-year-old sitting in a bar thinking with only my limited experience, I couldn't see how someone could be fine with that. Like, oh, you're expressing that, and I love you. I love who you are, and you're more happy this way. And that's what love is. That's the true commitment of a relationship, is like your emotional responsibility. I'm taking it, and I want you to be happy. And if I'm not comfortable with what makes you happy, like my first wife dissolved because she wanted to fuck a lot of people, and I am not a lot of people. And I was like, fine, go be happy, and I will do likewise. And that was really when Beezy was born. When you met me, I was coming out of that marriage and trying to find myself in all the ways I was repressed. But knowing so many trans people, it's like whoever's discomfort with it, if it's usually on the right, it's like just a lot breaking off a lot of social things and stuff that is all messy with sexuality in general. And then on the far like tinfoil even left, where it's like all this trans stuff coming up is part of some inorganic agenda, and not just that this is a natural phenomenon, and these people are finally like not afraid for their lives to the degree that they were, but they oftentimes still are.
Yeah, so we had a question here from Progressive American. Thank you for coming in. Good to see you again. Yeah, he's a guy. He was in a recent viral video and was on Tucker Carlson because he rapped about Ukraine to some politicians in Texas, which is, as I said, it's cool. Just make it, anytime anyone makes a politician's day worse is good, in my opinion. Yeah, and then. So I just debated him, and it was literally my most shouty debate ever. Like, I have had more civil conversations with literal Nazis, like call themselves Nazis, like than I had with this fucking guy, because just out of his gourd.
Oh, you just found him on YouTube. Oh, I'm sorry, Connor. I'm so sorry.
You should have seen this at the end, though, Beezy. This is this. I said before, I really feel like this topic just freaking hits some people like weird, because but like the last person I debated on this was Sargon of Akkad, And like, he was freaking like Aristotle compared to this guy. But by the end of the debate, the dude's face turned completely red. It twisted into this like demonic like leer, and then he ran away for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was really funny for me because I was taking a pull on a cigar and I did not like see the screen. And you're like, "What's going wrong with your face?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I've got to see this." He was BZ. I don't know if you heard this earlier, but it's the same description I used earlier. But he was redder than my local DSA chapter. That dude was like red.
I'm sorry to tell you, your DSA chapter is not quite as red as you think.
No, touche on that one.
Speaking as someone who recently stopped being a paying member, because I was for like out of a fuck you when Bernie dropped out, I was like, what can I do? I was chipping in like X a month to Bernie. I was like, fine, DSA. And I just sort of let it run for a while. And eventually I was just like, DSA isn't doing great.
I mean, they're better than the Democrats.
I'd rather take that like $2 or $3 a month and put it into a Patreon and unlock some bonus episodes and support a creator that does some great stuff at this point. But yeah, so that sounds
Patreon.
Yes,
that's all right. I'm doing really well on Kickstarter.
You are, man. I can't believe what you're pulling off. And I'm trying to get to that point where I'm just getting over my imposter syndrome fully and getting to that point where I'm like, okay, I've done it. I need help. So yeah, anyway, go on about, so it's funny you say Sargon of Akkad, and one thing you were talking about before I kind of jumped in here, I was listening and I was thinking about a lot of these people, and I run into this phenomenon too with people who are the comedy acolytes who like latch onto, whether it's your Joe Rogan, your Doug Stanhope, Bill Hicks, whoever it is, and they venerate that. And I'm speaking as someone who did, until I tried stand-up comedy and found just what broken human beings most of them are. And I'll tell you this, like the one thing that I get the allure of, like your Sargon of Akkad and your a lot of your comics or whatever, is like they're getting up there and they have certainty, and confidence about a lot of things. And like there's an allure to that, like, oh yeah, and they're clever. They work at being clever, but then they lock themselves into like, that's how I think. And I just think the axis everyone needs to be on more is like, where's your curiosity? And don't rely on the certainty of others. Like it's funny. I can't believe you actually have shared a space with Sargon of Akkad, because I've watched so many video essays on what an absolute fool and a child that person is.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me that I get how he arises to. It's like he's very fucking confident in what he believes. And I talk about this a lot with my friend Phil. Like for me, like my confidence, it's hard for me to get confidence to come out here and like, I'm going to tell you what's fucking this issue is, but it's born out of a lot of curiosity and a lot of lived experience. And I don't see that from a lot of these guys. They read the right couple of books and they know how to echo shit and play and sing the right tunes for the right audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of people. There's big business in telling people what they want to hear. I think that's something we sort of learned, looking at kind of the Jesse Lee Peterson audience. Like, these are people who are racists, who on a certain level know that they are racists, and they want to be told that they are not racist, and in fact, they're right about everything. And you can get a reasonable career for yourself where you make money just telling these people what they want to hear and reinforcing all of their biases. You will be objectively evil for doing it. Like if there's a hell, you're going there for sure. But it's something that you can do. There is a market for that. And it's a market that is traditionally underserved because there is a lot of infamy in becoming that person, in becoming the next Father Kahulin, for a very, very deep American history cut. If you want to be annoyed, look him up. For being the person that goes to the scummiest people in the world with the worst opinions and tells them you're right and everyone else is wrong. They will fall over themselves to give you money if you do that. But also, then you're stuck with them. And you've got to hang on to them and please them for the rest of your life because nobody else will touch you. Yeah, what are you saying, BZ?
There was I watched a great example of this today. Thought Slime dropped an hour-and-a-half video on Gary Vaynerchuk.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've just seen in like little meme clips here or there, but yeah, he just sells this whole story of himself that's abridged and leaves out a lot of legs up he has. But he's just selling people on his own confidence, and it's that self-help thing where it's like when you look at him, it's like, well, a lot of what your career is like, maybe you had a modest success here or there, but then you're really just riding the success of selling people on an idea of success. Like if you know what, it'd be like if I got out there and I just confidently told everyone, you know what you need to do? You need to learn how to code. And then while you're there, you need to learn how to do graphic design. And while you're doing that, you should try and do acting and music and then go to open mics and live in New York for 10 years. And I just told people to live my life, which is my unique experience that had led me to whatever success hopefully I will attain. But if like I get to that point and then I just keep telling people like, this is my story and telling them how to think, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, it's all over the place. These traps, these mental honeypots.
Yeah. Well, it will, and there's money and prestige behind it. It's really sad. Like I was saying earlier, like if you come to my channel, one of the things that I find to be very important is that regardless of where you are, I don't want you to think like me. I want you to think like you. I want you to see the world in your own unique way, and I want to bolster that in you, because that's the beautiful thing about life and the beautiful thing about us. We are the universe experiencing itself. To tell you the truth, it's very likely that if a huge number of people came up to me and were like, Brent, you've got shit figured out, I'm going to do everything like you, and I'd tell them not to do it, and I'd probably change my opinions. Because I feel more that it is more important. It is greater work to get to not make a copy of yourself or your ideas, but to grow and nurture a unique human. Be that if it's your kid or your friend or whatever. I want to raise up within people that inherent uniqueness, that value that they and only they can bring to the world. And it's not going to be exactly like mine, but I guarantee you absolutely every single person has it, within their heart, within their ability. It just has to be brought out. And, again, I talked about my time as a coach, at the beginning of the debate to establish ethos. That's what coaches do, And no, I'm not doing a life coach thing. If anybody fucking says that, I hate life coaches. But no, it's like you want to support a person to become the best version of themselves they can be, not to become a copy of you. So that's my long and drawn out way of saying that if anyone becomes a Brenton Lengelist, I will throw you out a window. A first floor window, but still, I think it's appropriate. Defenestrate you.
It's appropriate, and it's good that you think about. One of my favorite authors is Tom Robbins. I can't recommend him enough as someone who jailbroke my brain on a lot of things, and they're fun stories. Everything by Tom Robbins, not Tony Robbins. People, but the value of like finding your own path and discovering things and paying attention to stuff. And Tom Robbins came to my mind because the first quote I underlined him was, success can eliminate as many options as failure. And I always thought about that just hung in my mind about the trappings of success of whatever you're going towards. And, at one point in my life, when I was early, I was going to college. I wanted to be an actor. I was like, kind of like you on a theater track. Yeah. And then I went into like coding, and I was just like, I'm happy just doing acting wherever I can do it around here and not making a career out of it. And that's one of the wisest decisions I feel like I've made looking back, and for a while I was thinking, oh, am I just in my mind rationalizing abandoning a dream? But I didn't. I kept doing theater. I fucking met you, and when I was most fully myself, and you were like, that guy's cool, I'm gonna write a character that's half based on him and cast him in it. And I've always told people, like, I don't know how many people saw Mike or ever will, or what that play will be, but I'm like, that's a life accomplishment for me. It's like, and the fact that over the years I'm still doing theater. I'm in 2 short plays right now that are like some of the most challenging things I've ever done with a director I love. So it feels really great to have not commodified that passion. And knowing what it is, like, okay, you want to be a writer? Well, there's a lot of grinding you got to do to write if you're not like just writing what you dig. Like, you've made your bones being a manager of different things, but not being like an ad copywriter where you had to take your passion and then wedge it into a commercial space. And like, if you're going to be a paid actor, like, you have to show up and do hemorrhoid commercials or work with really toxic people, or Harvey fucking Weinstein. You know, I think about,
by the way, the CEO of my comic company actually worked for Harvey Weinstein when he was in the movie industry, and I think Harvey fired him. And like at the end of that, he was like, "Yeah, no, I was not at all surprised."
Everybody was fired by Harvey Weinstein. Should put that on their LinkedIn right now.
Yeah, that'd be a great thing. They should all get like an award.
Oh my god!
By the way, so. Thoughts on Mario Judah? To tell you the truth, I don't know who that is, so I can't give my thoughts on it. Thank you for the super chat, though. I really appreciate that.
He's a rapper.
Oh, a rapper?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't listen to a lot of rap and hip hop. The rap and hip hop that I do listen to was actually being produced by like some friends of mine in New York. There was a long period like when BZ and I, like he mentions Mike. Okay, so this is another Brenton Lengel deep lore. So my first year in New York was 2009 to 2010. And I moved to the city with just what was on my back and about $5,000 in cash that I had saved. Well, not in cash. It was in my bank account, but, you know, terrified that I would not be able to cut it. I'd been a small-time actor in and around the Midwest, and things weren't really working out. And I was like, well, I could be a small-time actor not making enough money to live in Ohio, or I could be a small-time actor not making enough money to live in New York and have a chance to do something, you know? And so when I got to New York, I was lucky enough. I had attended a friend's barbecue, like a friend of a friend that I didn't know, one of the few people in the city, and they recommended an open mic. And I was so new. The open mic was 94 St. Mark's Place that they had written down. And I read it as 94th Street, Mark's Place. And so instead of the East Village, I was up at like 94th Street, running around like, what the hell? But I found this mic, and I was home. Like, it was filled with some of the most incredible artists and
it's
writers.
Still like
and
the most magical like memory of like, you'd go there and, you know, this was when, like I said before, I started doing stand-up comedy, and I was going to like every mic. It's what you do. But I was really into like, this is where I didn't jive with the comics. I would go and I would try whatever I did. Sometimes it was funny, and a lot of times it wasn't. And that's what you're supposed to do. And when I'd see comics that were like good and clearly had honed a craft and were polished, I'd go up and try and chat them up and be like, wow, I really like, you know, I wanted to connect with them. I wasn't trying to be weird. And they just be like, whatever, you can talk to me when you're good. Like, you're not at my level yet. Bye. And the musicians were not like this at all. Yeah. And I ended up just vibing with them a lot more. And then eventually one inspired me to play music, who is now the most successful musician from that scene, Charlie Crockett.
Yeah.
And what a badge of honor to say, like, you know, over time, it's becoming more and more. Eventually now more people will be like, oh, really? If I say like, yeah, BZ, that was a nickname given to me by Charlie Crockett when he was crashing in my, you know, apartment, living like, you know, off of money made on subway busking. But that, by the way, the mic scene was button it up. Yeah. Like what you would see there was, it was jaw dropping. And it's what started my podcast, was just like, there's so much grassroots talent ignored at especially at the New York level, but I'm sure in your town, wherever you're at.
Because you have to commodify yourself and you have to replicate things that are already profitable in order to break into like the modern culture industry. So you have to compromise your art just in general to just even be noticed by a lot of the establishment cultural industrial firms at this point, which is it is tragic because it deprives us of art that uplifts us and makes us think and gives us 7 Marvel movies every year. And as much as I enjoy those,
it's one of the things I'm really grateful of for Kickstarter and crowdfunding, to tell you the truth. Like you cannot make a living as a indie comic artist anymore. Like, and you like an indie comic creator, like even if you're getting published and being sent out, there's just almost no money in it. And like you cannot make a living, like even like if you're working for like Marvel and DC, okay, you can get
if you're signed by the major label, okay, but if you're an art, it's kind of like if you're a musician, it's like there's the super, you've made it, you're everything's taken care of, but even then you're kind of in debt on a lot of levels. But you're obligated to a lot of things to maintain that comfort level. But at the same time, there's like the scrappy musicians who are like, they're doing teaching gigs and they do a Kickstarter for an album or this or that, and I imagine
those people are absolutely
across the board in the arts. You find that kind of shit.
Yeah,
I mean, in my like podcast, and then which is just an echo of like my journey through the mic scene. You have bands like Cutlery, this three woman trio, one of the greatest, most surreal, magical bands. They'd have like visual, like cult, like curated, like video projections that would go along with their haunting siren shit from like the 1920s. I would call it ghost folk. And then they all that band had to dissolve. These 3 women went off, they had their lives, one had kids, one had to move, this or that, and that's gone. And then I have a 2-part, like 4-hour interview with this guy, Zayla, who was like a gutter punk anarchist musician that was on the road all over the country, has been a junkie, has been a drug dealer, talks about sleeping with hookers or whatever. But that man is pure music and pure art. It's like, but he has not figured out how to properly commodify and commercialize himself.
Oh boy! By the way, let's bring this up. Brenton has a mental problem. Yes, probably, but also no, you.
I do.
Well, don't we all have a mental problem, and it needs attention? Therapy's fine, and I wish more people could get it. I wish I could get it. I think we all should get
% of New York City is in therapy.
As part of the pandemic relief, we all should have got like BetterHelp vouchers for a fucking year.
Yeah, I'll be dead honest. I've got post-traumatic stress and social anxiety from my time in the military, and I get help for it. So like, okay, and
I've got I'm a little dyslexic. I've got ADD. I don't think I have the hyperactive component, but it's definitely there, which is almost sometimes my superpower, because if I hyper focus on the right thing, I'm incredibly productive. It's just sometimes I stare at a wall for 45 minutes. But yeah, like this is the thing. Everybody seems to have this idea about like sanity. And I think it's highly overrated, because really like what people consider sanity to be like within our society is that you fit within this specific ideological category, the specific box, and then also that you are economically productive, that you can be used to make someone else a whole bunch of money. And they call that sanity. And I would actually call that intensely insane. The only societies that do that are ones that are insane and unsure of themselves. You have to allow people to deviate from the norm. You have to allow people to be themselves, and so like, even with this like freaking Alex weirdo, that I talked with and was losing, he's a sheep at this point. He seems very incurious, doesn't really examine his own ideas and stuff, but he's a weirdo.
Well, here's the other thing too.
And
like,
I like that. I have a lot of affection for it.
I think we kind of mentioned it. Well, we talked about it from the angle of someone adopts those views because they know there's an audience they can exploit for it. That, if they scream into that echo chamber, money will come back and the reverberations. But there's also the thing where someone does earnestly have warped perceptions of the world, which are not fully have not been fully investigated, and they will find that if they vocalize them, there are a lot of also misguided people who are happy to hear they're not alone in their misguided perceptions, and a lot of people who benefit off of misguided perceptions being amplified who will embrace them. Like, why is this guy on Tucker Carlson?
Yeah. Well, he's on Tucker Carlson because the political project of Tucker Carlson is to destabilize the United States of America and destroy this country.
Well, and also he was profitable because he went viral. So you had to suck every bit of value out of whatever's popular this week.
But if he's a true believer, like you're saying, he's just he's really in it, and he's not a grifter, or if he is. But the point is, like, he had his moment in the sun. They're like, oh, let's lift this guy up and embrace him, and he's only going to feel validated by. Speaking of someone who went viral at Occupy, I proposed to my wife there, and that really galvanized the attention that I got from that. But I felt very responsible, like what you're talking about. Like, you get it if you get attention for like the work you do, like you wield that responsibly. And I suddenly had attention on me for that, and I was like, well, I got media press. I would talk about what mattered to me in the movement, and I threw myself into it more. It wasn't actually like a thing that embraced me as much as like, oh yeah, you had to kind of like fight your way through it, and it's messy anarchy, man. I loved it, like, and there were a lot of arguments and existential conversations that just made me think and just kept making me curious. It wasn't a world with Occupy that I went into where like you had to be indoctrinated into a way of thinking.
Yep.
Maybe a modality of getting things done, but not like you have to be, in lockstep.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And by the way, guys, so BZ, this was his other claim to fame for the longest time. He got an incredible viral video where he proposed to his wife using the People's Mic at Occupy Wall Street. If people don't remember this, actually, Occupy came up in the debate. And the guy he was trying to talk about the 99% and the 1%. I'm like, where? You don't fucking believe it. Where were you at Occupy Wall Street? And he's like, oh, I was too young. And I'm like, oh, that makes fucking sense.
Well, then listen to your fucking elders who are there.
Sit
down, kid. I have stories I can tell you.
You know what, by the way, I will mention this. Sorry, Bobby, I'm cutting you off real quick here because I don't want to lose the thread from the mic scene. The reason I brought this up, by the way, was to Adam M. There is a really incredible hip hop musician. I don't know if he's still doing it, but King David of Grown Man Status. He actually sampled me on an album. Later, we had a falling out, ironically, over transphobia, but brilliantly talented. There were so many like incredible like underground hip hop acts that just will blow the socks off of anybody that's famous at the moment. And
I just been researching the Baltimore mixtape scene for the Wire podcast. Some sick shit. There's actually an essay I came across from this professor of journalism about mixtapes as like a mode of revolutionary communication.
Oh yeah, kind of like zines.
Yeah, but the real underground hip hop, I'm getting into that.
Ironically, this Alex, who he reminds me the most of, honestly, was like the performance artists in the Mike scene that we did. I wrote a play called Mike. It's a semi-fictionalized account, like to capture the essence of the New York City underground open mic scene circa 2010. BZ played a wonderful character in it that was partially based on him, and did that great song of yours.
Slapstick Tragedy. Brilliant. I'll record it one day.
Please do. And I think you can find it online.
Keep messing with it. There's versions of it all over the place, but it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
I'm working on it for like 11 years now.
Now I haven't let Bobby speak for a while, so I'm gonna bring him in here. But just before I do, like the Alex guy, one of the reasons why I think I have a bit of affection for him is that he strikes me as a performance artist. Like he was, yeah. At the beginning, he was saying like he was doing the red leather, yellow leather, and he only knew red leather, yellow leather. I responded with good blood, bad blood, because there are these theater warm up techniques. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, he must be a theater guy. But no, I don't know how he heard that, but I guess he wasn't a theater guy. Yeah. At some point, by the way, before we go tonight, I need to do the copper coffee pot opening, like the vocal exercise for everyone. That'll be fun. So, Bobby, I know we were talking about you wanted to read us a horrible poem, but is there anything you wanted to throw in before that, or do you want to just jump into it?
We could jump into it. We could do another stream on it too. I don't know. Well, okay. Let me see if I still have it pulled up. Hold on 1 second, because I've got to find it in my folder of evil.
This is Bobby. If people are just tuning in, Bobby is an incredibly smart individual. He runs he is Mustache Bob 2 on Twitter, and if you are Mustache Bob 1, contact him.
Yes.
Yeah, we just lost Beezy, by the way.
No.
He'll probably come back.
Yeah, Mustache Bob 1 has to meet me on top of the Silver Cup building in New York, and we will fight over the screen name.
Yeah,
there can be only one.
And Bobby's going to win because Bobby is you're a Golden Gloves boxer.
Golden Gloves boxer, and I was a competitive fencer, so I've got it both ways on the Highlander front.
Yeah. Yeah. So, by the way, this is coming in. Yeah, I don't think he's a bad guy. He's just confused and drank too much of the right wing. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
And what struck me here, because Beezy was saying I was calling him like a true believer. I don't think he's a true believer, actually. I honestly think he's a performance artist, and he is probably very wounded. Because the society treats artists and people that don't conform very poorly. And judging by just how weird he got during this, I take it that he probably is someone that doesn't conform. And honestly, he should have solidarity with trans people and gay people as a direct result of that. But, you know, the failed right-wing ideology that he's embraced unfortunately prevents that. It's going to prevent him from having a genuine human connection with quite a few people, because I'll tell you what, the freaking Tucker Carlsons of this world, the Ben Shapiros, these people are vampires.
Yeah.
They feed off of people's the worst aspects of people's personalities, and they grow rich because of it. And it's really, really awful, and it drives a lot of people into very bad places. So, you know, you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to be on the left. But for the love of God, do not let like Fox News and OAN and like all of these programs and propagandists do your thinking for you. It's horrifying that that's happening so much. Welcome back, Beezy. We lost you for a second.
I had a weird, like my computer just like shut down and rebooted.
So, Bobby, I'm sorry, I've been stepping all over you tonight. So go on.
It's your show, but like what you were saying just now, I think it's a very good point, because what got me into actually doing content was being annoyed with specifically the Sam Harris's, Eric Weinstein's, and Jordan Petersons of the world. And my personal project is to try to replace that failed right-wing ideology with something that's better. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong about what's better. Maybe I'm not. You know, feel free to voice your disagreements with me. I actually just got my first Twitter troll, so you can be my... Yes, I will fight to Princess of the Universe by Queen. I have that album. I think it's called Some Kind of Magic. That's the Highlander soundtrack. Yeah, normalcy is boring. That is a good point, Connor. I think it's Nietzsche, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, who said that you should observe the world and show me the pleasures of sanity, sarcastically.
Yeah, that sounds like Nietzsche.
You know, right before I cut off, you were talking about the guy you were debating and him having a, you know, some theater background.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been recently thinking about, I'm really into this podcast. And that's the other thing, like right wingers if you got your conspiracy theories, we got them over here on the left, and they're actually a lot more factual and fucked up. But I've been listening to this podcast called Subliminal Jihad, where it gets into like occult connections and all kinds of fucked up shit, where just people who believed in magic and like, but had power and other things like that, and get into things about it. But anyway, one of the things that's come to mind about it is thinking about magic, and not like, oh, people are casting spells and things are happening, but you'll get this, Brent. Art is magic.
Oh yeah.
Theater's magic. Music is magic. And if you can learn the tools of improv or comedy and music or the magic of producing a TV show, like all of the things, the inflections that go in with oratory, like oratory is a form of magic. The way I'm speaking, knowing how to speak with authority, the better you can do that. And that's why they all speak a certain way on TV. That's all fucking magic.
Yep.
And
everyone here, by the way, when this is over, don't do it now, because I don't want to lose my audience, because I need to make a sacrifice to the YouTube gods. But there's a great video. It is here on YouTube. It is Alan Moore on magic talking, and he literally says pretty much the exact same thing that BZ just said, that what is a spell? Like, to cast a spell is literally to spell. Grimoire, grammar. It is the manipulation of sounds, movements, and symbols in order to create a change in consciousness within reality. An example of a magic spell is don't think about pink elephants.
Yeah,
exactly. I can put a picture of a pink elephant in your head just by making those noises.
Connor has a comment in here. I do wish some lefties did a lot more investigative work when it comes to this. I would highly recommend check out Subliminal Jihad, and I learned about them from discovering the podcast Program to Chill. And I'm actually going to have the host of that show, who's very cheekily maintained his anonymity and goes by Jimmy Fallon Gong.
That's a great name. That's a really good one.
And he does fantastic Program to Chill deep dives into like, it's the tagline is business, parapolitics, and esoterica. And parapolitics is really just like, and the business thing, get into like how these people connected. So like how people were both in like fraternal organizations like Freemasons, like if there's continuity there, Skull and Bones, and those things are like those weird continuities do exist. And that's what I appreciate about like discovering Program to Chill and Subliminal Jihad, is because they're actually doing deeper. Yes, TrueAnon is pretty good. QAnon Anonymous.
I love QAnon Anonymous. I started following them because
of
their the Jake stories, like, because Jake is like a really good writer. Like they're just so funny and awesome, and I wish they did them more. They're actually one of the few people that I actually give to on Patreon every month, and it's totally worth it.
Their interlude music is like one of the best on the internet.
I'm still holding out hope that I'll get on TrueAnon. I have a mutual friend now who, Bobby, you've read his book Cherry, Nico Walker.
Yeah, that was a hell of a book, man.
He's a big booster, and he was in jail with someone who I'm doing reports on, Tony Viola, with regard to like his wrongful prosecution. And so that's led to like, now I have, hopefully, like I'll be able to eventually get on TrueAnon. If I haven't really pushed for it, but it was sort of pushed to me like, oh, let me get Brace in touch, and Brace retweeted me. So yeah. But I'm Jimmy Fallon Gong, just like right before I jumped on this, he DM'd me back and was like, oh, I'd love to come on, because I told him I'd love to talk to him about, because I don't have a lot to offer him, like, and like I don't want to just talk to him like, tell me about everything you talk about on your show, like go listen to his show. I said I wanted to have a conversation like with him about how do you reach the normies, and I think what you do with debates, like we're saying, is how do you reach the extremies on the other side, but the normies, and even like, I struggle with this with my wife, and I don't know if you do, Brent, but it's like she just doesn't have the deranged paranoid brain I do, that's constantly consumed news for 20 years, has read all sorts of conspiracy theories, or just like deep political theories and deep history. And so I'm always sort of finding opportunities to mention, like, just so you know, this is kind of what I think, but we're on the same page generally, like day by day, but how I manifest in my life. But it's like, it's nice to find other people doing this work.
Yeah. Behind the Bastards is amazing. And I have nothing but good things to say.
I'd say they're a good gateway now, finding deeper dives into most of his subject matter. Anything that you like on Behind the Bastards, go find more content about it, because there's a lot more.
By the way, so Beezy actually had Robert Evans on his podcast. And Jemt, I don't know how new you are to the Brenton Lengel universe, but Robert Evans actually plugged my comic book Darude Shadow of the People like on his thing, and it pushed my comic from like 6,000 to like 25,000 on Kickstarter. And it all came back because I was trying to pay him to run an ad, and he was just like, no, you don't have to pay.
Nice.
And he mentioned it on the thing. Is super cool, because by the way, super expensive to run an ad with that podcast network. So I'm very grateful of it.
I lucked into him. That was an example of just, like I was at an open mic, waiting my turn and killing. I was just there by myself, drinking a beer, reading Twitter, and then I saw Robert Evans put something out, and then I saw something else related to it, and I replied to him. I forget about what, and he wrote back, and then I just was like, "Hey, can I interview in my podcast sometime?" And then he's like, "What about?" And then it's just kind of off the cuff in DMs, just like, I'd just love to talk about. I've followed your career for a long time, so it'd be cool to just get into how you got from there to here. And a week later, the Christchurch shootings happened.
Oh, Jesus.
And that's really when he became like, he was a go-to for 4chan radicalization and all sorts of stuff. And then with Behind the Bastards now, he's just exploded from like however many followers on Twitter he had as a metric. It's like 10 times as much now.
Ginormous. He totally deserves it. And so but when we were talking about magic, Bobby, you have a terrible spell that is incompetently written and executed. Let's hear this horrifying piece of art that you sent it to me and I read it. And I'll tell you what I think of it after you read it.
So the three of us have to get together maybe at some point this week and do a more detailed thing, but we'll do this right now. I will read this. This is from Barry Weiss. And this is an actual poem that she posted on the internet. Seriously. And it goes something like, "We are losing because we are unserious." That's line 1. Line 2. "We say, I am a brand. Follow me, like me." Zelensky says, "I am not iconic. Ukraine is iconic." We ask, "Is America ill-gotten?" Zelensky says, "Ukraine is mine." We say, "Words put us in danger." Zelensky says, "I will never surrender." We LARP on Twitter, and we work hard to get people fired for bad Halloween costumes. Ukrainians line up for guns and say, "I want to defend what I love." We take down statues of our founding fathers, of Lincoln, Washington, Jefferson. They say, "Glory to Ukraine." We say, "There is no real truth, only power." They say, "Might does not make right." We say, "Anyone who disagrees with me is a Nazi," and then parenthetically, which, by the way, is exactly what Putin used to justify his invasion. And that is a serious poem that somebody who used to be published in the New York Times put on the internet.
It makes me want to vomit myself.
Myopia when I get into shit I'm working on or projects, and I miss a lot of news stories. When did we take down statues of Washington or Lincoln?
We didn't. Okay, there was a statue of Lincoln, I think, that was controversial. I don't think they took it down. But it was like one where it was like he was casting a spell on a slave to free them.
There was one too that they altered the inscription because it said Abraham Lincoln Democrat, meaning that he was in favor of democracy, but they didn't want people to think that he was in the Democratic Party, so they changed the inscription on it.
Well, that seems odd because lately they've thrown in like 100% with white nationalism. So
it was a right winger.
By the way, there's something in here. So I want to welcome, by the way, Rumpley. Let me find this because I didn't quite get this, but. So Rumpley, hard to replace Harry Weinstein's and Peterson's right-wing views since they aren't right-wingers. They're right-wingers. They're not Republicans. But don't laugh too hard, Bobby.
I'm sorry.
There is a difference in this. I'm going to recommend something if you like Peterson. I want you to go and search for Alan Watts. Alan Watts is probably one of the most brilliant people to live in the past 100 years. And he puts literally every other public intellectual to shame. If you find a lot of meaning in what Peterson talks about, and even if people around here like find a lot of meaning in stuff that like they hear from like Zizek and Noam Chomsky, Watts is a giant compared to these people.
Tom Robbins. I will.
Oh, yes. And
Tom Robbins down hard. And you'll have more fun reading him than any of these motherfuckers.
And while I agree with
a lot of wisdom, Tom Robbins, because he has characters that often are great vehicles for wisdom to their protagonists, but they're often like they don't just give it over. They're like pain in the ass, or they're funny, or they're cheeky and shit like that. So yeah.
Rumpley. Sorry if I interpreted that. Usually, I would say that I consider Peterson definitely to be right wing. Yes. I think he's a reactionary, though. I don't think he's a conservative. Though he kind of rides and it's very hard to even figure out exactly what he wants or wants to say. He's very canny about everything.
About Sam Harris, like Peterson, I've never read him, but I've taken in a lot of people who have dissected him and seen a lot of him contemporaneously on things, and just been like, what the fuck? Who the fuck is taking you seriously? I don't get it. But Harris, I remember finding, during the Bush years, I was a young atheist, and I appreciated someone who was just articulating like, fuck religion or this or that. But as I've gotten older, I'm just, it's funny to see that, like, now realize, like, oh, he was a grown man and he didn't get to the point where I did in my 30s, where I'm like, okay, but you need to understand how, like, what it is, like what it actually is to people that participate in it, like in totality. He was just looking at the worst. And I'm not saying I'm someone who ultimately hopes we get past a lot of religion, but it's one channel of many for power to be abused.
Yeah.
So as an anarchist, I'm like, well, that's why we all need to be anarchists, because all these institutions we have would be served a lot better if we lived by those principles.
By the way, I want to say we got a guy in here with the. I'm always happy when someone tells me that I did well, but I do appreciate this. And the thing is that I know that when I make these arguments, I'm fighting an uphill battle, and I'm doing that on purpose. It is very important to me that people think for themselves, that they not take what they think is real and set for granted, that they don't, get swallowed by the failed right culture machine, because it destroys humans. It absolutely does. And it just like physically, in the sense that it causes problems and mass shootings, but also like spiritually and intellectually. I don't want people to agree with me. I know that most will not, particularly not on modern day debate. That's not why I do it. I do it because people need to hear these ideas. They need to hear these. They need to hear these positions that they consider at the moment unthinkable, because what that is going to do is that is going to hopefully make them curious and break down some of the programming that they have had to deal with from the absolute pigsty that is mainstream media culture on the right or the left. And to do that, you need a gadfly. You need someone to essentially, administer a mental shock, not literally, not in a sinister way, but in a way that suddenly you think, oh, the world is a little more complicated than I thought it was. And if even one person after the debate thinks that, and thinks about themselves and their world in a little bit more of a compassionate and critical way, I've done my job. I got Beezy on here, and Beezy, you were one of the people who helped fucking jailbreak my brain. I mean, I remember after when when everybody was celebrating because Obama had gone and killed Osama bin Laden with SEAL Team 6. And I was even buying into that. I was like, well, we've been trying to get this guy for years. He killed like 2,000-3,000 people. This is wonderful. And you pointed out how bloodthirsty people were and how they weren't thinking. And, that really contributed to where I am right now. I've said on numerous occasions in my debate with Hake, I've said certainty is a hell of a drug. Like, it's a literal drug. You're the one that told me that. And I believe you got that from Tom Robbins or something similar. You read the Authoritarians essay, I think.
Oh, no. There was, so it was actually like Glenn Greenwald was very, I was following him when he was just like, the equivalent of like a YouTube streamer with a few hundred subscribers, but it was, he was on Blogspot, and he cited this study, The Authoritarians by Bob Altemeyer. That was like sort of a long-term study of understanding like authoritarian thinking. And that's where I started to have that, like, oh, who your authority is, whether it's your religious leader or the politician or the pundit or the radio show or the podcast, who is your authority? And you'll give a lot more credence to someone that's in your in group or whatever. And so I became oriented to that, and then Occupy happened. But also what made me, kind of abandon, like realize like partisanship is not where it's at, bro, was seeing the Obama election and watching a lot of anti-war liberals suddenly become like not so urgent about it. Like, okay, our guy's in, we got to give him a break. He's doing the best he can, making all these fucking excuses or for why he wasn't pushing for this thing or that. And then allowing this continuity of all the worst foreign policies. And it disturbed me to see the authoritarian thinking happening on the left wing, because my political consciousness happened where all I saw was all of the authoritarian thinking under George W. Bush, where all these supposed like civil libertarians, because that was one of the things about Glenn Greenwald. He was conservative, and he was appalled at Bush as a civil libertarian. Like, that's how you have to, like, Greenwald's value really is ultimately is that he's a civil liberties extremist. He said that himself. So, yeah. And so Occupy happened. And then I think by the time I met you, Occupy hadn't happened. But then when it did, that's when I learned what anarchy was. And I saw some of it in action, and I became exposed to some of the theory and some of the practice. And my praxis for it certainly is how I parent and how I regard damn near everything I come across. Like, okay,
I applied anarchist ideology, like anarchist ideas and structures to like how I managed my team when I was functioning as a manager. And surprisingly enough, I had one of the most loyal and long-lasting teams like in the entire industry. And they excelled in ways that like they're still excelling, like even when I'm not there. And it's because, I used anarchist organizing principles and how I led them.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Rumpley here. I remember when Harris was a hero for smacking Christianity around, but he became a racist for offering the atheist treatment to Islam. He was a racist for saying that we should possibly nuke them. And also for having that Charles Murray guy, like who wrote the bell curve, like on his and acting like he was a real scientist when he wasn't. This is another thing why I'm going to recommend Alan Watts. So I got completely hoodwinked by the new atheists, like around like 2010. Like I loved Christopher Hitchens so much, I named my cat after him.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, he's a much better cat than Christopher Hitchens was a human.
I've been seeing there's a lot of Hitchens love out there. I think the Left Reckoning does regular like Hitchens rewatches of old appearances and debates and shit. I came to know him right at Iraq, which is a weird place to be introduced to Hitchens.
Right.
Yeah, when he's stumping for the freaking warmonger. Sorry, I'm trying to find, because I have a copy of Ben Burgess's Hitchens book somewhere around here. That he,
and Bob, this is a question, while we're, maybe circling back into like conspiracy things too. Like, I always wonder, like, to what degree anybody is like targeted to be influenced you know, if you're like, we need to make a war happen, and Hitchens would be one of any who are just cocktailed, people get close to them and make like cases to them for why this is important, because it helps. Like, not saying they did that to Hitchens specifically, but I wonder to what degree that's ever deployed on a, you know, this would be like the covert level.
Well, you
like
definitely
love bombing an influencer. Continue, Bobby.
Well, you definitely, if you're trying to persuade people to support war or any kind of policy measure, you definitely tailor your propaganda activities towards, I guess we call them influencers now. So you wouldn't necessarily target Hitchens specifically, because even then he wasn't like that popular. You know what I mean? But you would tailor your arguments to the point where people like Hitchens would support them. And you would take what you could get off of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This ironically, this was kind of a point that Caleb was making with his bread tube book.
But fuck that book.
Yeah.
Fuck him. I'm sorry.
I haven't read the book.
I'm sorry you're in that. Oh, and real quick, and Bobby, I invited him. I said Sophie from Mars has a 2-hour conspiracy on the left, which I wanted to watch and kind of parse out and just do a long react to that, because
I've got notes.
She's got a lot to say about what Caleb did. I also watched her reading of Caleb's book, and holy shit. If anything, I look at him and I certainly look at Peter Cottontail, whatever the hell his name is.
Peter Coffin.
What, that guy's like goddamn piece of work.
You know, kooky artists are going to be kooky artists. I've liked a lot of Peter. He seems to be better in video format than on like Twitter and stuff. By the way, I just want to bring this up here. So I'm kind of late, but is Brendan taking the L hard or not? What I would say about whether you think that I took the L or not, one debater's face turned red, twisted into like a rictus leer, and ran away with no explanation for like 5 minutes straight, close to the end of the debate.
Is that just an acolyte thing? Like someone be like, so you're like, that just thinks you failed? What the
well, no, take the L is accept that you lost. And the guy had said in the debate, he used that phrase a couple times. So a few people who are influenced by him and aren't thinking for themselves.
He declared that you lost?
Oh, yes, during the debate. Because that noted thing that someone who's good at a debate.
That's fucking hilarious if we're talking about like people like questioning things and people abusing their authority. Like just him knowing like, well, if I say you lost, then in some people's minds that'll be fucking real.
Yeah. See, I heard he said later on that he was going to take a pee. Bullshit.
No, that dude definitely
like, maybe
ran away
he really had
angry.
to pee, but like you look at that man's face, that is not someone who feels confident about anything ever.
That was an angry leak. If he was taking one, he was like,
well, can it be both, Giff?
Yeah. He was peeing blood.
Maybe one induced the other.
Yeah. Well, who knows? You know, again, I think we started off mentioning Tycho Brahe. You know, he held his piss so long it killed him.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, so as we've been at this for about almost 2.5 hours. Yeah. But I would say overall from this debate, my thinking is this. I think the society would be a much better place if people like Alex got to do their performance art and their comedy and didn't have to risk poverty and social, I guess, banishment for doing it. I think Alex is genuinely someone who doesn't fit in and has been abused by the larger society for a very long time because he doesn't fit in. And at the moment, you know, he's been able to gain a bit of fame off of some viral videos that were, I shall say, convenient to certain very wealthy and powerful interests within this country. And what I would hope as things go forward is that he thinks a little bit more about what assumptions he has about reality that he's never really considered and just taken for granted. Because right now, he is essentially being used, and he will be used and discarded by some of the worst people in the world. I'm talking about Tucker Carlson. I'm talking about the mainstream right-wing media machine. Like, the Republicans sit here and talk about how awful the MSM is, the mainstream media. And the mainstream media is absolutely awful. It is an ideological project designed to prop up capital and elites within our society, and to keep the rest of this public of our population subservient and serving them either as soldiers or workers. However, the right-wing media machine is as bad, if not worse. And I would say the worst thing about it is the right-wing media machine literally churns out terrorists. In the sense of the Christchurch shooter and the El Paso shooter and Dylan Roof. And that's what is waiting at the end of that road. If you go down that ideological path and if you believe their culture war, it will also destroy the United States, like, as a whole, because these people are idiots. Fascists always are, and they have a intensely warped view of reality. And to look at that, you only need to look at how they responded and how shocked they were by General Milley, who Bobby B knows, I believe.
I've met him a few times. I'm not socially acquainted.
Yeah, not so, okay. But, like, they lost their shit because for the longest time they thought, we are the real men, we are the military, we are power. And it's just not the case. Their idea of masculinity, their idea of power, and their idea of even how the society works at all is completely out of step with the rest of society. And completely out of step, honestly, with traditional values. These are people that have been sold a false bill of goods. And
I will say, what a lot of people on the right wing see is the corruption of the powerful in the Democratic Party. And they will think that the Democratic Party is like the left wing, is like what socialists really and leftists really want. And they will also see all of the people mindlessly cheerleading Democrats because they've just they're the kind of Democrats who only are looking at like bad things a Republican do and never look at a bad thing a Democrat does.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that is something that we really have to reckon with as we're kind of, like, right now. Eugene Debs back in like the 1920s was saying that they were in a sowing period, meaning they were like kind of sowing the seeds of a movement. And then later in the 1950s, like, I think his successor, whose name I can never remember, was saying that they were in the reaping period. Right now we're in the sowing period, and we have to be mindful of people like BZ was describing, kind of bringing our movement down or halting our movement's progress. I got an argument a while back with a guy who was saying that Governor Cuomo should never have resigned in New York for his like monstrous sexual assaults. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because he was a Democrat. And I'm like, dude, you are the problem with the movement. You are
as if a Republican would even win the governorship in New York State. Jesus Christ.
Well, I literally run the toast I had this morning.
My sweet old boomer neighbor at my last house, like a couple of blocks over, who I still keep in touch, and he's a nice guy, but Jesus Christ. I like having him as an ally when he would be like, because he's a true blue Democrat, but he would say shit like, if we could just like get rid of all, like, I forget what soft way he put it, but it was just like, oh, if only there weren't Republicans, everything would be fine. And I'm like, that's kind of thinking's not getting us kind of get.
Yeah,
no,
it's not. Well, and that's been one of the things that I've seen on the left that's really been pissing me off lately is, like, they don't want us to talk to the right wing ever. And I'm like, okay, so you can't talk to them. What exactly do we do now? Because literally the only answer there is fight them. And most of these people can't even hold up a sign in a stiff breeze.
Well, I'll tell you, this is where the work of doing investigative journalism and working in wrongful, now straying into a lot of wrongful convictions, and helping out people who are Republicans that got chewed up and caught in the system, and now like the veil's been lifted off, but all the people that support them are like this and that, and
by the way, yes, you're correct. They
Yeah.
will, because they are looking to justify their biases. Obviously, that's how everybody responds to debates when you're a hyper partisan. You experience it in such a way that you think that your guy won. You can't do anything about that. All you can do is hopefully get the few rational and reasonable people to think a little bit more. Sorry, Beezy, continue.
No. I forget where I was like going with that, but yeah. So I completely derailed. Bobby, save me.
Yeah, on the one hand, you guys are right. You absolutely should talk to Republicans.
Oh,
yeah.
talking.
Sorry, I just got to go with this.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know that basketball is I don't know where he got that at any point, and that should key you into the fact that he had no argument, because he was having to make up arguments that I had made and attempt to advance them in the hopes that the dumber people in the audience would believe that I did not know that basketball was a sport. I am very well aware that basketball is a sport. I just don't like basketball and don't care about it.
There's no fighting.
Say what?
There's no fighting.
Yeah. I like combat sports. I like swimming. I like hiking. Those are what I'm interested in.
I know how to play football. I know how to follow a game. I'll maybe hear about what's going on or whatever. I don't watch it. But you can't say, you can't hold it against me anymore. Like, it's an arbitrary thing to pick out, like, especially if it's like a metric of my arguments on anything that would be debated seriously. Like, you might as well be like, you don't play D&D, or you don't watch this show. Like, it's a thing you're into. Who gives a shit? It doesn't define who you are at all.
Absolutely. So we did both demonstrate emotions, but one of us turned red, twisted into a mask, and ran away.
That was so weird. I've never seen someone do that in real life.
I have, and it's usually they're drunk as a skunk and being pushed beyond their limits. This is another thing, and I don't want to defend myself here. I think the debate's going to stand on its own merits. Show Veritica. No one can define a woman. No one can define anything in an objective sense. We were talking about this at the beginning. Sartre obviously pointed out that even something as simple as a chair cannot be defined in such a way that includes all things that are chairs and excludes all things that aren't. As far as the Leah Thomas might bear children, yeah, she might. I don't freaking know. Again, we are not privy to knowing about people's bodies, and we should stop saying.
Are we doing the sex is the same thing as gender bullshit?
Oh God, he was doing that nonstop in the entire thing. But even if, like, again,
if here's the thing. Yeah. However, if I want to live, I feel more comfortable. I want to shave all this off, and I'm just suddenly like, oh my God, it lights me the fuck up. Mm-hmm. All the time, to the expression of being a woman. If I discovered that about myself, which I've done drag for like Rocky Horror, I've put I've stepped a toe in that pool, and I was like, it's too cold. It's not my temperature.
I don't have the thighs for it, so
I won a drag contest in Louisville, at Actors Theater of Louisville, and I realized afterwards, I found the pictures later on. I realized I had dressed as Penny Pollock before Penny Pollock I even knew she existed.
Well, and I tell you, like my cousin who she transitioned, and she mentioned like doing some goof thing like that. Wasn't I like, oh, I like this, but then like, it was just a fun night, whatever. But then it lingered in their brain, and like, I don't have that, so whatever. But if I did, and my wife's fine with it, and my kids are fine with it, who gives a shit?
Mm-hmm. If you really want to get your mind blown about how we like socially construct language and how the symbols that we exchange for phenomena that exist in the world. There's a book that you should read called Language as Symbolic Action by Kenneth Burke, who is a communication scholar who wrote like 1,000,000 books. And they're all really dense. But yeah, like the idea of like what we have as a woman, Brenton is correct. Like giving birth isn't the definition that we have of a woman. A woman is a very specific social construction that we've made up over like thousands of years and that changes constantly. That's just a role that we assign as a society to people with certain characteristics.
Yeah, my mom stopped being a woman after menopause. Is that
exactly like like my
well, but she could have, or she had the gear to do it. Like, so what?
Yeah.
There, you know what, like, yeah, that's what matters is honestly, it's better for everybody. Like I said, my early perception when I was my younger 20s that like, oh, any trans person has to live this deceptive life, because I couldn't envision that, people could just be okay with that. And now I've met so many who are, and it's fine. The problem really is just we need to let these people express who they are. And you know what? There's a lot of fear, disinfo, and bullshit when it comes to like kids, because I know people with kids who like they want to express that way and they're much happier for it. And there's nothing they're doing that's irreversible at any point. And they are, they're going to be better off for it because they won't go through irreversible things that their body just goes through because of the puberty that will go against how they feel comfortable expressing.
Now, I wanted to say, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, BZ, just because this is getting lost in the chat. So here's the thing. I am not interested in a good look or a bad look. I am interested in telling the truth. And that is where myself and Mr. Alex are going to part ways. Alex was doing his best to play to the audience's biases, their whatever ignorance that they may have, and just basically gain as much clout as possible for the minimum work possible. I will say what is true, no matter how unpopular it is, because again, this is something that matters to me, and it does not matter to Alex. And it does not matter to the right-wing media machine that he is aping and that is currently boosting his career. So, I would rather make the correct argument right now and have that get into the head of some of the smartest people who reject it at the moment because they have been conditioned to reject it. And then in a couple of years, when their life experience changes and they grow and learn, they think back and go, you know what? He was right. But the thing is, if I don't do that, if I don't make the radical argument, the unpopular argument, if I don't make that argument, what's going to happen is that people are going to just float through life without ever considering these things. So I would rather be a laughing stock for telling the truth than the president of the United States for lying, and that's just a fact. Those are my values. And that's one of the reasons why I do these debates.
I see. A lot of people just really get hung up on this, like trans athletes thing. Like this is what the norm we're heading towards. And I never see the discussion put forth that, are we looking at the growing pains of, well, if these athletes, if maybe you have a case to say that because they went through a male puberty and now they're in the female side, that gave them an advantage that you can't take away. Sure. Well, you know what the solution is to that is like that. I wish that athlete had fucking transitioned earlier.
Right. Well, the other thing is
absolutism is idiotic, dude. And I'll tell you why absolutism is idiotic, because even if it's the best thing in the world changes. That's the one universal constant. And any absolute system is inflexible and cannot adapt to change. And that is why absolutist societies have crumbled time and time again throughout history.
I don't know. I can do absolutums like absolutes, like more power, more corrupt.
Yeah. Well, that's different than absolutism. Absolutism
more
is a political
philosophy.
How high are you guys? Not I don't know about BZ. I think he's just tired.
Oh yeah, no, I had a little something, but I mean that's my stat. You know, I'm a high functioning high person, I would think.
If there is no way, well, yes, in such a way, there is no way to say who won a debate objectively. It's opinion. It's always opinion. And there is no objective definition for literally anything. You can't even, let me give you an example. The sun. Everybody knows what the sun is, right? How big is the sun? Well, is it the extent of its light? Is it the extent of its fire? Is it the extent of its heat? Yes, all three are correct, and all three are mutually exclusive because language is symbolic and cannot describe the objective. All we can do is point in that direction. This is a common philosophical problem called the problem of identity. And the humans
now, can I ask a big question?
Stuff. Yeah.
Because if I were put in this predicament, you know, it's like it seemed like, you know, people are putting these things out there. I just have trouble like even yielding to like we're gonna get into the abstract semantics. I'm like, you want my definition of a woman? Like my sister's a woman. It's fine. And if you come over and you have a problem with that, like what? Why? What do you see that you're like? I can't accept that person's happy expressing as a woman. Like that's where it fucking ends for me. Having relatives and knowing so many people and like there's nothing wrong with this. The only problem is we're like forcing them to hide it and they're scared in a lot of situations.
That's actually a very good point because
it's a concrete reality, and these debate bullshit and people who get tied up in like theory and text, their brains are all too abstract. Like if you're getting into the goddamn all the debate people and the language they use, and it is they let that obscure concrete reality.
I would agree, but what I'm also going to say, BZ, is that I think at the root of a lot of really bad assumptions about the world and really toxic ideas is bad philosophy. I think bad philosophy is at the heart of the TERF movement, as well as a lot of
any philosophy is bad if it doesn't exist in experience and practice.
Yeah, well, I'll give you that.
Well, I think it's also kind of telling what BZ said because it highlights the fact that the failed right-wing movement, especially in this country, doesn't actually have any basis in material reality. Like they can't really outline a real harm, so they have to make up these stories. Like we're living through like Satanic Panic 2.0. Like if you look at the world right now that we're living in about trans people, where this doesn't actually exist in real life. They can't find like real material harms that trans people are doing, so they have to make up these narratives that like trans women are coming for your kids' bathrooms, or trans people are coming for your kids' sports trophies, or
they're gonna steal all.
I don't know about you, but I mean, like my co-host on other podcasts about The Wire is, you know, he looks into pedo stuff, and we were talking about it, and I've heard him say on other interviews, you know, just about everybody knows somebody who was sexually abused, and most of the time it was a parent, an uncle, a relative, a babysitter. It wasn't often like you're trained, like, you know, oh, you know what, everybody's got this story, you know, there's a lot of actual, like, no, I hear about family members and I don't hear about, you know, that's concrete, you know, that's real. We see that kind of abuse all the time, but we don't deal with that. And we still treat victims with respect and take them seriously.
Absolutely. So here's something that I wanted to bring up here really quickly. That's fine. It just seems pointless to try to communicate if there's nothing real. So here's the thing. It's not that there is nothing real. It's that we must be agnostic about reality, because evolution does not favor organisms that experience reality directly. Rather, it favors organisms that experience reality in such a way that contributes to their survival and or reproduction. So like, this is literally a fact. You can Google it. There's a TED Talk on it. A good example of this, for instance, just for that everybody can understand, because we've been talking about viral content. Everybody remembers the dress. Do you remember the dress, BZ?
Oh God.
The color bullshit.
Yeah, the color dress. Sorry, would we have you up past your bedtime? I don't mean
no.
Yeah.
No, I was reading another thing.
Oh yeah. So the thing is that, and color in particular is big about this. I actually brought it up in my debate with JF. So when people look at that one picture of the dress, some people saw a white dress with gold trim, and others saw a blue dress with black trim. Interestingly enough, the weirdo that I am, I saw a blue dress with bronze trimming. And people were fighting back and forth about like, what color is this dress? I think the dress was actually blue, or maybe it was white. I always forget. But like, the point is that there are these cracks in human perception, and they're hard to notice because we don't have access to other people's heads. So there is in my opinion, there is an objective reality, but we can't directly interact with it. We can only indirectly interact with it because of how evolution has sculpted us as organisms. And this is very relevant again, because people think a lot of things that are real are not real. A good example would be money. Money isn't wealth. It's a measure of wealth. It has the same kind of reality as inches or seconds on a clock. It's important in our society, but only because we've decided it is as a measuring device. But plenty of people think it's real, and they spend their life, they waste their time chasing after money, only to realize that they are miserable afterwards because there is no reality to it. They have been chasing after a mirage. So yeah, anyway, that's my rant about money. We're coming up on 2:40. By the way, there's a couple of other things right here.
I got it. There are plenty above that, Daniel. There are plenty of real material harms trans people are doing, because people from every walk of life commit harm. Are you deliberately just being like cheeky, or is that supposed to be a dunk?
Yeah, I ignored that. Bobby, you
count me dunked. I'll let that one pass.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Not all.
Like, do you engage with that thinking? Is that honest? Or you know, like, for anyone out there who's taking that seriously, don't.
Yeah, not all affronts require a response. I'm going to let that one.
Makes sense. I'm going to point out something. Like, when I say, for instance,
okay, if that was cheeky, I'm going to allow for that.
Yeah,
you know, like
cheeky.
you're in.
I couldn't. Oh, good. I don't have to answer that.
Thank God.
That is why I fucking hate the internet. I like doing videos. Chatting is because, man, there's so much context that gets lost, and I'm just like, holy. That's either like some like grade A level satire snark, or what?
Shoo, I actually did define a woman in the debate. You know, my definition for a woman, and I defined this on the spot talking to Sargon in my first debate here. It is to identify as a woman and to be accepted by your community as a woman, in much the same way that the way to be a doctor, the definition of a doctor, is someone who identifies as a doctor and is recognized by their community as a doctor. And it was the funniest thing in the whole thing, because like we have licensing for doctors. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, that's how society doing it. Yeah,
that's how we figure this shit out. Oh man.
I think that's what my point is. Like, if it's like, you know, who they are and how they're, it's my job to accept them, and there's no harm in it. And the one person who it most matters to my sister and then my cousin when she's dating is that the person that they're with knows that they're a trans woman, or, you know, like, and if that the type of woman they are may come with limitations. Like, if your fears, if your problem with this, like, well, this person doesn't match my definition of woman because that requires the ability to have children, or on a, like a, I guess on a means level, like the median or capability or whatever, then it would be just like if you dated a woman, a cis-born woman, and she didn't have ovaries or the functioning parts to have a child, and she at some point is gonna have to tell you that, like, that's how I'm built. But otherwise, like, you know, you're going to make each other feel pretty fucking good. And if you're attracted to each other, then Godspeed, get to know each other and live some full lives. And I hope everyone that gets wrapped up in caring about these things too, that's the crazy thing, is like the people who are most animated and agitated by the existence of trans people don't fucking know any of them. And it's like they're not like, it's like Louis C.K. used to have a bit where he'd chastise people who had a problem with homosexuals, to be like, it's like they're like coming up to you while you're trying to eat breakfast and like touching dicks over your cereal.
It's kind of like if somebody's like, I don't like eggs. We need to take all of the eggs off the menus or across the entire country because I am personally offended by eggs. Yeah, fuck you. So on this one, by the way, if you're going by acceptance, then trans shouldn't be allowed due to popularity. No, see, this is the thing. I'm not saying what should be. I'm saying what is. I'm saying that for a social role to be something that someone inhabits, that they actually are, you need a social component for it. You can't be a woman if your community does not accept you as a woman. I could not be a man if my community did not accept me as a man. It has nothing whatsoever to do with my biology or anything that I do. It has to do with what does the society that I inhabit project back to me. Now, when I say trans women are women, what I am saying is two things. I'm saying that that they should be treated as women, and that I believe them when they tell me they are women. Ultimately, gender, because there is a social component, relies on more than one person. Like, you need to have that. And if you identify one way and society identifies another way, you get pushed into this kind of liminal space that's very abusive. And that's why we need to alter our definitions slightly in order to make allowances for these people that a lot of us were not aware existed before. So, yeah, I mean, again, like, if I'm a doctor and I identify as a doctor and I've gone through medical school, but my community won't allow me to treat illnesses and throws me in jail for trying, I'm not a doctor. I have the ability. I'm a potential doctor, but you need
the role of
more than one
doctor,
person.
and that certainly changes a lot over time. It changed from barber to doctor. At one point, they both occupied the same office, or just changed, flipped the sign. A lot of social constructs change all the time. And it's, as long as people are living more happy, honest lives, like materially, which is the case with every goddamn transgender person who has felt free to express their life that I have known, and I have known many. Mm-hmm. That's all I need to know. And that's why I don't know how I would fare in a debate, because it'd just be like, it's whatever you've got is your own fears and prejudices, and are not grounded in, unless like you've got some shocking, even if you have an anecdote about a transgender person that you personally know, who is just like, whatever kind of danger you're worried about, or you've got actual concrete stories about the things you're trying to pass legislation about and you're worried about, if you actually have a deep understanding of what it is, what the experience of a parent of a transgender child is, as I do, then okay, we can talk. If you haven't done that research, then I feel like you didn't come to the debate prepared, and why should I bother?
Yeah.
Why is it my job to fucking educate you? You're the one out here being certain that you know all the goddamn things about transgender. Why is it my job to like fucking educate you? Like, you didn't do the work, and you should shut the hell up and go do it and stop debating people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, but they never do that, do they? There's a bunch of idiots blessed with.
Why I don't debate.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're suited to it, Beezy. You have less tolerance for bullshit than I do. So really quickly, there are these things. So I can see this, Danielle. Like I said, Alex, he's got there is a part of me that really likes him. I think, he's at this point where he's injured, ignorant to a certain extent, way too arrogant, and is allowing himself to be used by terrible people. But again, like I said, I think Alex, is somebody with a very interesting and unique view of the world. And I also think that he's someone who is at their core a performance artist. And we were talking about art as magic. He's got a little bit of talent in that realm, and that's kind of probably what you're connecting with. But what I'm also going to tell you is that, especially as this goes and he gets more and more corrupted by this right-wing media machine and this toxic ideology, it's going to be bad for him and it's going to be bad for you. Like, again, like, I cannot express to you guys how dangerous this way of looking at the world is. And it's most dangerous to the people that inhabit it, and also to the people that then become inspired to go and commit violence based upon it. Again, Christchurch, directly inspired by Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern. You've got El Paso, you've got Dylan Roof, and not everybody's going to do that, but there will be wounded enough people who take this shit seriously and go out and commit an atrocity. And, we got to be careful about that. So anyway, I think we're kind of done here at the end. Bobby, do you have anything you want to plug your pluggables?
Oh yeah, I'm Mustache Bob 2 on Twitter. I think you plugged me already. Mustache Bob 2 on Twitter. I'm Mustache Mafia on YouTube. I don't really post on SoundCloud anymore, but if you want to listen to old episodes, you can go on my SoundCloud. There's also Mustache Mafia, because I'm very cool. If you're Mustache Bob 1, find me. We will fight over it. There can be only one. I really should just look up that guy, because I haven't bothered to. Hoping virally I'll find him. But that's me. I will be on BZ's new podcast, which is really good, called Walking the Wire, episode 1. He and his co-host Philip are running a really cool podcast, and I hope to be on more episodes of that.
Hey, dumbass, why are you sitting here watching?
Yeah, bro. Like, okay, you want?
Yeah. Oh my God, you're just actively wasting your time for no reason. Go somewhere else. Fuck off.
Go to my channel.
I don't need your plugs. Okay. What are you? Yeah. Why are you watching a live stream? Like, and besides, I've got good shit. All right.
Press some more, bro. The
Walking the Wire is gonna slap. We're doing all sorts of fun things. We've already got 4 episodes in the can. I had the most exciting moment when I mentioned that the episode 2 guest is Tim Tolka, who's the author of Blue Mafia, and I plug this to people all the time. And I recently was telling a woman who might be a guest on us. She was the former chairman or president of the Cleveland Police Oversight Commission. Huge fan of The Wire. And I mentioned to her that Tim Tolka, and was like, he wrote this book, Blue Mafia. She's like, oh, I know it. I'm like, I love you. Finally, someone knows this book, and it's great. And he told me that's who he wrote it for. But anyway, we got some great guests coming up, and we're going to go into a lot of the things The Wire does well, some of the things that it didn't do so well, some of the places where it's aged poorly, and some of the places where it was very prescient. So it's a holistic, honest. We're not being acolytes of David Simon, like, oh, David Simon did everything right, but he certainly gave us a lot to talk about, and that's what we intend to do for the run of the whole series. So it's a bit of a commitment for me on a podcast level.
I'm looking forward to it, BZ. You, as I said at the beginning of this, you're one of the most brilliant people that I have personally run into. I highly recommend everybody to check out what BZ is doing. You will be incredibly interested. And by the way, you mentioned Charlie Crockett, who named you BZ. So Charlie Crockett, actually, if you guys look up, there's a video on my channel, Anarchism in the Natural World. And I used part of one of Charlie Crockett's covers for Big Muddy on that. So fun little bit of deep Brent Lengel lore. All right. So as I said, this is Brenton Lengel. This has been my live stream, I guess, insurrection with Brenton Lengel. The intersection probably also fits at the moment. I will be continuing to do debates going forward. I have the possibility of a very, very big one coming up, which I'm really excited about. And also I've got the Snow White Zombie Apocalypse first trade is, and you can find it, just Google Snow White Zombie Apocalypse Volume 1. You'll find it on Kickstarter. It has been fully funded. You can still get a copy of the book. Just click the pre-order icon. You can also find my series Durruti, Shadow of the People, about anarchist Buenaventura Durruti. It's a war epic, like one of my favorite stories to tell, and it's really growing. And I have a secret third project that is about to be revealed that I'm working on with a really major artist. And I'm really, really excited about where we're going. Further on down the line, I've got a novel that will hopefully be out soon, or at least kickstarted soon. And yeah, I'm here talking philosophy, Buddhism, and occasionally arguing with crazy people. So thank you guys very much. Yeah, so from me to all of you, I'm signing off. Continue to think and to be critical, and for the love of God, do not let any of these vampires in the mainstream media, right or left, think for you. Don't let anyone think for you. For the love of God, think for yourself. All right? And I will catch you all later. Bye.